Yo. So
See it.
he's got his own like YouTube channel now, O'Reilly.
Well, he's got to because he got booted from Fox a few years ago.
Of course.
Was he touching women or was he just like exposing himself?
It's not any one thing. We'd be here for like 2 hours, at least, just listening to all the things. It's just like his general creepiness on so many different levels got him in that situation. But yeah, we were talking about I-10 and 995, where that comes together and how that kind of makes Jacksonville a hotspot for crime in Florida, and a lot of drug foot trafficking coming in there. But yeah, you can start off in Duval County, Jacksonville, start driving west, and becomes the Santa Monica Freeway. Man, run right into the. You're willing to go spend a lot.
It's a long way on the 10.
Spend a lot of time in Texas.
Yeah,
900 miles from end to end, and I know that all too well.
I'm sure. So, anyways, man, let's introduce Jason Myles from This Is Revolution, a podcast. It's like
what up?
Representing the Bay Area, Oaktown.
I'm representing the Bay, but I am wearing the Broncos.
That's right. Yeah,
Bowl T-shirt from their loss against the Giants in '87.
We always analyze contradictions, and anyways, we're all full of them. You know what I'm saying? So, like, excited to have Jason on board.
Hey, I'm pretty.
Pascal.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I heard about you guys. Well, I heard you, Nate, on By Any Means.
Mm-hmm.
But I had heard about you because somehow I was speaking about sports a while back last year, and a friend of mine in Montana. Is there anybody in your crew?
Oh yeah. He's on Twitter all the time. Like Left Turn in Montana. Are you talking about? Yeah.
This dude isn't on social media at all. He just knew about you guys. He just happens to be from Montana. And he's like, "Oh, you got to check out Redspin Sports. They're like leftist sports guys." I was like, "Word." I was like, "For real or like pretend?" He's like, "No, like for real." So this for me is kind of a big deal because that dude that said that I really value his opinion, and then hearing you on Jackie Lukeman's show, I got super fired up and actually sent you a message right away. Before the show
that's right. Over. That's right. That's what precipitated that. Yeah, man. I was what's wild is I do those as a teacher, man, teaching virtually, looking at little boxes on the screen now, and then like I got a quick lunch, and it's like I get off, and then as soon as I hang up after doing those like weekly Redspin report things, it's like, all right, so like, what's up, kids? Like, like turn your camera back on, like, what are you doing? Like, what's that? Like, I mean, man, if the memoirs got lots of good material this year, I'm telling you, man, you see some things you can't really unsee too, like in the background. So it's all part of the world we're living in right now. So if you maybe real quick, Jason, you just kind of tell what you got going on in the Bay Area and kind of what made you and Pascal like get going with This Is Revolution, and also just kind of I know you've interviewed Gerald Horn, like some of the guests y'all have had on, kind of the whole project and what you kind of feel is most important.
That's that's an interesting question. I'll be honest. So I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I told you that I'm a touring musician, and COVID shut everything down, and we had come back from we had done Brazil in the U.S. summer, and we did the U.S. and Canada in the fall winter. Mm-hmm. Never really a good idea to be in Canada in the winter. I'm from California, and
our guest last week's up in Edmonton. Had negative 40 or something.
When I see snow, that's for movies. Like that's,
come look in my backyard right now.
Nah. Hey, check it. You can show me a picture all day long and be like, "Oh,
I'll send you some." Yeah, you'll
but real life, I don't dig it. So I wanted to do this, and when you tell a band that I got this idea, we should do a podcast, they all are going to look at you like that sounds stupid. But I was like, well, I lived at the time. I just moved out of it. I was saying off air, a studio in West Oakland where a lot of videos are filmed, but it's not a studio you're supposed to live in.
Yeah.
But there was artists coming in and out all the time that we got to know from various genres of music. I don't give a damn what genre of music you listen to. That artist, from classic stuff to whatever's contemporary. I remember one day going in the back to say what's up to a friend, and E40 and G-Eazy were filming a video, and I was like,
dope, man.
So it's like that's the environment that place was in. So I was like, dude, we can interview people here, and we can talk about, you know, the politics of the places that we go, because, you know, I'm not famous, so I'm always going to be in what's called a B market. I'm always going to be in a small town, and or we're always going to be in a small town. And they were kind of like, nah, it doesn't really sound interesting.
Yeah.
And so we kind of tested stuff out while we were driving with some live streaming conversations. And they kind of were like, maybe, but they're like, nah, we don't really want to do this. So because all the recording gear was in my place, you know, upstairs, I just recorded one by myself, and then the drummer and I would do it together. And then we would have people come in, because again, it's a pretty wild spot. So sometimes we'd have guests come in, and cats would just like roll in, and it'd be a lot of fun. And then COVID happened, so I had to start like calling people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got disconnected from even my bandmates, because they're all everybody trying to figure out life.
Yeah.
Right? We all had jobs and things that we did in the industry, and that all got shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept kind of going at it with this, and I didn't have to be focused on music so much, and I could be focused more on politics, because it was always going to be politics and music.
Right.
Unfortunately, the show is technically a music show per Apple Podcast.
It's even though, and y'all, it's the realest, deepest music show, most dangerous music show out there, man. I'll put that stamp on it right now.
We talk about music every so often, because I think I like to talk about pop culture in a way that where you can have a conversation with your racist uncle, because I'm not one of those guys that's like, fuck my racist uncle. I'm like, he's frustrating, but let's use the lens of music or the lens of like movies and pop culture to have a conversation. You can't change someone overnight, but you can definitely challenge some of the bullshit that they say, when you're not pointing your finger and wagging it like, oh, you old person, you just don't understand. For me, like RoboCop and Red Dawn are like the best ways to do that, to ever explain.
It's easy to break down. That's one of the hardest things, though, is like differentiating who's like, you know, to some people like just died in the wool reactionary, just like, you know, pieces of shit that just that's just what you know, but they're having the wisdom to kind of like realize kind of which people are, you know, have redeeming qualities and are products of propaganda and have the ability to grow, and then versus like kind of who the it's a challenging thing, man.
Look, I'm a black dude that plays heavy music.
Yeah, man.
So I'm always going to be an outsider, outcast when I'm in the middle of the country. And not to say I have to pander to people, but I need to let people know, A, I'm not a threat.
Why don't you, to highlight that, you might want to tell that story you told me in Utah after.
About the cops.
Yeah, man. Whoa, man. It's a wild.
That's a real story, man.
Wild shit,
man. That's a real story. Happened in 2016, I believe. But you know, being able to listen to, and I don't think I told you this, Nate. I also worked in the Gulf of Mexico on oil rigs for a short time, which is another environment that was very foreign to me, because again, I'm from here. I was raised in California. I have family from the South, but having family from the South and like living in the fucking most southern point you can be at is very different.
Yeah.
And like at that point in time, I'd never seen white people eat grits. So I mean, I like sat there and stared like,
a lot of culture shock going on, right?
Really? They got bad credit too? Babies' moms and fucking drug problems and warrants? Okay, this is interesting. We can have a conversation.
What about the whole lie that, you know, white people like you never shown in film smoking crack and stuff like that? So then you had the BS narratives about how it's just crack's just in the hood and stuff like that.
No, man, no. I've met a lot of white crackheads. Speaking of white crackheads, so we're on tour and we had an off day in West Virginia. I don't know if you guys ever been to West Virginia.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so. And this band I was in was me and my ex, and my ex is an Asian woman from Canada, so she has no frame of reference for a lot of the places that she would be in. She kind of has an idea of the U.S. South and racism, but she doesn't really understand it, right? So we had a day off in West Virginia, and a friend of mine calls me up. He goes, "Hey man, my brother's in he's still in West Virginia. You should call him up and see if he wants to hang out." So I call my friend's brother. I'm like, "Hey man, I'm in Morgantown, which is where the college is. You know, always very safe place by college town." Yeah. And so my friend who I knew very well, my friend's brother goes, "Hey man, I'm way out here in the middle of nowhere, and I really need someone to come over here and pick me up and take me to my house. I'm working this job out in the cuts." He goes, "I'll pay for whatever gas you spend, and I'll buy you dinner if you can come get me." I'm off in the middle of nowhere. Why not? Yeah. Let's take a stroll down a state route.
I know what
the Appalachian Mountains.
Hey, Mike, I know what big game James Coleman would say to that. Anyways, he's a former player. He's a radio guy in Jacksonville, sports radio. Used to train me.
When you say no?
Yeah, he like, man, I'm not doing it. I mean, he had a story where his family, what was it? His great granddad basically had to leave out of Savannah in one night, Georgia, that is, and his family, that side of the family's in New Jersey still. So he's like, man, I'm not going around.
I like the history of my great grandfather, the Sampson bloodline. Working as a mechanic, a white man didn't pay for anything, so he hit my great grandfather upside his head. He then hits him with a wrench, and then the whole family has to head south. So that's how we got.
That's interesting. Headed south. You actually headed south instead of north or west, like so many some
people I guess technically I would be up in Virginia now. Not Virginia, but Maryland.
I don't know. You said Columbus, Georgia, right? Columbus, Georgia.
So you know how we hear. So go ahead. Good to meet you, Michael. I'm Jason.
Yeah. By the way, we have to make that connection there. But yeah.
So you know how these stories play in the back of your mind from time to time when you get yourself in these situations.
Yeah.
And as we get deeper into the mountains and cell reception goes, and it's a beautiful drive, I advise anybody that wants to see a side of America that not a lot of people see. The Appalachian Mountains is very gorgeous. You definitely understand that divide, right?
Mike and I can definitely second. You've been through the Appalachians, right?
I mean, I'm deep. So we're deep in the mountains, right? Deep in the mountains. And there's these roadside motels that look like a series of shacks. They don't even have the magnetic key. That you have a screen door and a fucking regular key. So my friend's brother comes out. He comes out and greets us, and from his hotel, and the hotel or the little shack next to his is an entire family. Like there's generations out there, and they're sitting on the hotel porch, and you see the track marks in the arm. Like this is some rough shit. This is I'm in West Virginia in the motherfucking mountains ass shit, and I'm a little shook. I'm not gonna lie. Because I see camouflage. When I see white people in camouflage, my first reaction is, oh shit. If you got a big beard and you wear camouflage, it's double oh shit. Yeah. Here we are, in the middle of nowhere. My friend we were talking in this parking lot, and my friend said something about a bear. Like there was a bear sighting. Again, from a city. Don't understand how bears can come down to where people are. They belong in a zoo or in their own neighborhood. So
there's times you would have been scared of me, man. I did a few times in high school.
Not trying to talk to a bear. So I said, "Fuck! So there's bears out here. Fuck that!" And one of these dudes, I don't know, yells out, "I'll take you in the woods and show you a bear right now." So
yeah, man.
I turned around. I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm from the big city, and I don't really do bears." Yeah. And they laugh and they go, "Oh no, man, the big city's where you got to worry about. That's where all the crime is." I was like, "Check it. Homie right there's got a camouflage shirt and a big beard. That's the oh shit sign for black people." So right now, this is where the fear is. They laughed again and they go, "Oh no, man, you're fine right here. These roadside motels, this is the safest you're ever going to be. I mean, some asshole may say nigger from his truck, but fuck that guy. We got your back." Now, I'm not saying that these were the wokest individuals alive. But at that moment, it's like he's trying to put me at somewhat at ease. Like, okay, we're not trouble. We understand you're not trouble.
He's trying to put you at ease while indirectly putting you at unease.
Definitely, you get uncomfortable.
Too. He wasn't trying to.
It's a perfect paradox.
No, but imagine him saying that shit in a bigger city where people are a little more quote unquote woke or aware of proper language usage and all that other big shit. That is going to be a problem. Now, I don't like that. Why would I? But it wasn't at me. We ended up talking to the people for a long time. They ended up being really fucking cool. They were trying to like tap the power on a fucking power line to plug so we could plug in our shit and play for them in the fucking street. They were crazy. They were definitely fucking crazy. But it's like situations like that where people sit down and they start to tell you their story.
Right.
And their story is one of like displacement. First of all, this is a family that's living in a motel. This is a story of poverty and displacement. This is a story of deindustrialization. This is a story of being effed over by an industry that used to run your state, mining.
And the irony
destroyed your infrastructure.
Jason. Then on top of that, the whole irony that like the racism is a tool of the ruling class to like materially make those people's lives worse, you know, like as opposed to like it's wild. I mean, Frank Chapman, Mike, can you tell us a story about?
No, what I'll tell you on Nate is the thing about West Virginia, while we own West Virginia, is it's really probably had the most infamous like labor struggles amongst white workers against the ruling class. Like you had the Great Railroad Strike in 1877. In which like federal troops that were actually in the South kind of protecting radical Reconstruction from the Klan and shit. Basically was like, all right, that's over. Go put down the strike up north. And basically that's how, you know, a lot of black representation in the South got lost during radical Reconstruction. Klan came back and all that shit. But West Virginia especially, I mean, like you said, coal mining was a huge union kind of industry there. It was really one of the, like in terms of labor rights, it's a very militant state, you know what I'm saying? At least from my experience, kind of going up and down there. It almost feels like with black people in West Virginia, like a kind of like there's not a lot of black people there. You know what I'm saying? In period.
Randy Moss.
Yeah, I was gonna say Randy
Moss. You know what I mean? But like
that's like a small area. I forget the name of the area that he's from.
Rand, West Virginia. Literally Rand, like Ayn Rand. It's just out of wide and then you get Randy.
Is that near Charleston though?
It is. And like he played with, remember Jason White Chocolate Williams from the Sacramento Kings? Yeah. So he played for the University of Florida too. And like he and Randy Moss like high school teammates. There's videos on YouTube of like, children. They will throw in alley-oops. In fact, I can share one of these in a second.
Yeah, they knew each other as children. So I mean, I don't know, West Virginia was an interesting place, but when you start to go through the South in general, and even, especially the North, Rust Belt cities, which I played a lot in these places, you started to hear the same story over and over again. So a lot of this, especially in 2012. So a lot of this show for me what the music started to become was to try to like get out this story that I think people are missing, or they try to mystify with some sort of like John Cougar Mellencamp, Bruce Springsteen, Americana fucking this is all about the greatness that is American exceptionalism, when we're not talking about like the failures of capitalism, because all these people to me represented. And then also too, I would come home to this ever-growing homeless encampment that I was telling you, Nate. It's so big right now that people are living in the middle of the street.
Yeah, that's
so
wild, man.
You know, when it gets to that level, you're seeing all these failures around you. And again, I'm in the Bay Area, so there's always a demarcating line that says you motherfuckers can live here, but this is where our spillover tech people are going to live.
Yeah,
they're going to jog by you in the morning.
The Silicon Valley people, right? So many people can't even afford to live in that. What is it? The city of Mountain View, whatever, California. And like, so it's like they bus in all the work, but it's even like it's not even people that make like are like really low income, you know, that can't. It's just like very few, hardly anyone can't afford to live there. So it's like
there was that Netflix show, Last Chance U, and I think it covers the
Laney College in Oakland.
Yeah, and it's like that actually season I definitely recommend, because it definitely kind of does a good job of explaining like all those student quote unquote student athletes, free laborers or whatever.
Yeah.
What value is Langley like community college like football like producing?
Laney,
yeah,
community football.
A lot of money to produce any money.
Laney's one of the top community college football programs in the nation, and it's in kind of outside of downtown Oakland. My daughter went
there. Real quick, can y'all see this just for proof that like this is West Virginia for you right here? Just to show one play.
White chocolate. Well, that's a hell of a like generation of like
that is
high school athletes coming.
So anyway, that's proof of Jason Williams and Randy Moss connection.
Randy
I digress.
Moss together.
That's kind of insane that those guys were on the same team. Apparently, Reggie Bush and Alex Smith played on the same high school team.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff, man. But yeah, you brought up a couple things, Mike. It's something to go back to. Mike, I know it's like Frank Chapman, and Mike, you've worked with Frank in Chicago, and you know what they're doing in Chicago, y'all trying to do in Jacksonville with like Civilian Police Accountability Council and stuff, and building community support and building power in the community, and doing things to build those alliances. And but Frank had a story where, to the point about, having to have strange bedfellows, like literally being incarcerated in the Missouri, prison system, where he became a Marxist-Leninist, became a revolutionary, and he wrote a memoir about it, The Damn Don't Cry, that actually you should go check out in the Gray Zone. Anya Parampil interviewed Frank Chapman over the summer about his story. And Mike can probably speak to it even better than me, but there's a story where the warden was the common enemy in there, and he actually had to like organized with dudes that were straight white supremacists in that context, like to make, and it's funny that when in that moment they weren't going to stop being, he wasn't delusional at anything, right? But it's just like how you look at Fred Hampton. A lot of people finally learning, I guess, from seeing the film about how, the whole way he handled the whole Young Patriot thing, the battle flag. A lot of those guys were from Appalachia.
But they weren't. So we had Fred Hampton's lawyers on.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you should get into this. Yeah,
and I asked them about that, and they really debunked that. Debunked in the sense of, yes, the Young Patriots definitely had a battle flag, and I think I used a picture of the Panthers in front of the Confederate flag with them.
But it's not that central, right? It wasn't like as central as the film.
No, it wasn't.
Maybe, they had it on their stuff, and after a little bit, one of the Panthers, and I forget which one it was. I don't think it was Fred Hampton. Actually was like, can you guys, like, it's not cool. And they were like, okay.
Yeah, so they learned, they grew, right? And it wasn't like, he wasn't like just being like, oh, I'm cool with that, right?
No, it was not, I'm cool.
It definitely wasn't that. No,
they were not cool with that. Right. But the alliance, but the thing is, the Young Patriots were antithetical to like a Klan fascistic mentality, right? They're more like, we're poor white people from West Virginia that live in this fucked up part of Chicago. Yeah, and this shit is, and the cops are beating our heads in too. And for Hampton to kind of pick up on that working class ethic and go, okay, we're going to work together. That's what I don't see as much now, because there seems to be a debate over who gets to be working class or not, which is silly to me.
Yeah,
Mike, what's your take on that?
I think even with that, that they formed the Push Coalition against fascism. I think they had a basis of unity, which was fighting for community control of the police and against the police killings. Even if you look at the film, the scene in which, the young lords, Cha-Cha Jimenez, who I met actually like a year ago. So he's actually still living, which is crazy. Like he's been depicted in the film, and they was having like young lords who were getting killed by Chicago PD. The young patriots. They had poor white people getting shot by the cops. and we saw what was happening with the Black Panther Party. So they came together around this issue. It's one of those things that I think, and people come together in action. Not necessarily when it comes to ideas, because we live in a society in which there's going to be different viewpoints. So if it's like our whole basis is like, oh, we must agree on this and that. Like you said, what's this or that? You're always gonna get stuck in that debate world. However, what if like what happened last year? You saw like how many people we think protested last year?
I think hundreds of millions of people. Worldwide, or just in the country, probably 100 million people.
Yeah,
easy.
But they all did that around the idea of like putting these like killer cops in jail. That's why they was on the street. So like that's what can bring us together. The issue, right. What needs to be done, and I think that's what brought them together. And kind of that's why they were a big threat to like the ruling class structure, because if you're able to bring a lot of people together marching at the same pace and moving, then you are a threat, as opposed to they're totally cool with the infighting and the isolation,
But let me ask you this, Brother Michael, and I ask this to all of you guys, and I'm not saying this because I know the answer. I'm literally asking the question. Do you feel, though, that this past summer, the summer of George Floyd, we'll call it, right? And let's remember, he wasn't the only one. We got a Marbury to start the year off.
Right near Jacksonville, Florida, too. The
model. That wasn't Florida. And
Southeast Georgia, which is right across the border. Yeah,
COVID shuts us down, and Trump's rhetoric doesn't help. And we're 4 years into Trump rhetoric at this point. Do you think that the combination of Trump and the COVID lockdown exacerbated the frustrations that we saw? Because I think, and one is not worse than the other, but the young man in the same Minneapolis city that was shot trying to get his permit out that showed why he had a gun legally. On live stream. I'm still surprised the world didn't fucking shake for that shit. Yeah. And George Floyd, it definitely was uncalled for.
Yeah.
But do you think those things combined led to that moment? And if so, what happened?
Yeah, it's just like, it's real quick. I don't know as much. It's just like, it's so hard to predict these sparks, right? Because you're right. Like, it's like the Floyd stuff was like, it was on tape. It was like, you saw it 8 minutes, 46 seconds. But it's like, you're right. Philando Castile, why not? I think the COVID lockdown part of it and the fatigue from that, and people like also, going through the struggles, the real economic struggles of a government that wants to turn it into, and the movement, like let us, or people actually organize it around, let us go back to work instead of like pay us to stay home to like get this virus under control. So we'd be like China now, or New Zealand, or some of these other countries that did stuff right, but that requires collective organized action, right? And that's something that with like as atomized as this country is, right, with federalism and states' rights being this fetish people we have, it's like, I don't know, Justin, what do you haven't? Yeah, we feel like you haven't gotten to hop in or anything.
No. No, it is really telling. I think the elements that came together are definitely a big factor, because we've seen people. I shouldn't say, we have seen certain people sit this shit out for too long, because it's not just. It didn't start with I know Castile either. It started a long time ago. I do think that all those situations coming together definitely played a factor in that. I think that more people venting more frustration but channeling it into this one idea is definitely a part of that. But to say that it was I feel that way, because to say that it was just these deaths, then why weren't the hundreds, the thousands, before that enough? And it come together. Yeah,
it's like a combination. I mean, you couldn't have had what happened last year without what happened in like 2012 with Trayvon Martin or 2014 Mike Brown. I think it was 2016. Was it? The 2016 or 2015 was Freddie Gray. I mean,
yeah. Mike, I got to interject. Jason was in Jacksonville when the Jordan Davis stuff was going down. Actually, he was traveling, so I just wanted to let you know that little background.
Yeah. No, I mean, even that. I mean, Jordan Davis was it 2013? I think it was. It was like all. Yeah,
and that really affected me because passing through. I mean, you're a touring musician. I'm just passing through for the most part. I'm not going to stay too long. And to be there and to see all the news trucks out in front of the courthouse to get gas accidentally at the gas station where the poor kid got killed, it hits you in a certain way, just like it hit me when I found out that a Walmart that I stayed in touring stay at Walmarts that night in El Paso, Texas, got shot up.
Wow.
By a Trump guy. And because it's like I was there.
The randomness of life, people.
Man. You know what I mean? I was with them, people doing regular ass shit like they would do, and these actions happen, and it makes it more real. I think when you see it, you can go tisk tisk tisk, and then you walk away. But because I'm there, because I'm in your city, because I can't hide in a van or in a bus or a nice hotel. I mean, I'm sitting out in front of the bar, and I'm hearing everybody talk about the issues of the day. And in Jacksonville, definitely was. This young man that got murdered, everybody had feelings on it, and you just sit there and listen to those stories and you take it in, and you really get a feel of how a Trump comes to be, but you also get a feel of why Obama's still popular.
Yeah,
because there's also this either or. Like we had a person on the show.
I got to hear Mike's response to this, man. Keep going.
And especially in the Black community, there's like I do shows with we haven't found a name for this group of us, but it's me, my co-host Pascal, Toure Reed, Adolph Reed's son, and Cedric Johnson. And Toure is the reason why Pascal is on the show. He said, "Hey, you should get my buddy Pascal. You guys should do this thing." And we have these conversations about politics of the 90s, especially quote unquote Black politics of the 90s. And they were very, very conservative, and they were extremely reactionary. If you go back and watch a movie like Boys in the Hood, for example, which we did for the show once, because my YouTube channel is monetized. I don't give a shit. So we watched Boys in the Hood, and we kind of broke down these right-wing talking points. The movie starts off with the black-on-black crime myth. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to watch Boys in the Hood every time it comes on TV. That's my era. I went to the fucking theater to see it as a kid. Mm-hmm. But I understand the problematic nature of some of the messages in that movie. The things that it doesn't address. Almost the magical race thing. And then, you go to a movie like Menace to Society, where it's just like, we're going to take Boys in the Hood and we're going to fucking turn it up times 10 with the over-the-top violence, which, does exist. I can't lie and say that shit doesn't exist. I don't know where you guys live, but I'm sure you have been to a hood, or maybe you live in a hood that's violent, and you can go, I've seen it drive by.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt.
I understand drugs, but that shit comes from somewhere. It doesn't come out of nowhere. And those movies never really address the causes. And then if you listen to the voices, if you're really bored, go back and watch an old episode of fucking Donahue.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And listen to the politics on a Black episode with Donahue. So far to the right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound anything like where we are today, and it never addresses capitalism as any sort of problem.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Mike. What do you think about just in general? That's
a lot. I mean, I think it's all a lot. I mean, it's in general. I think what we've seen is definitely a progression in terms of escalating tensions that are the result of capitalism, result of racism, and hundreds of years of white supremacy. I mean, I think Trump definitely was a naked face to declining order of things. Like his whole concept of make America great again was, a return to, this idea of what, U.S. white nationalism was and what it isn't now, because, turns out when you invest a whole economic policy and fucking everybody over, you're going to lose one day, and those people are going to organize against you like other countries. There's a lot of opposition. Like the U.S. is no longer the hegemony it used to be, and I think there's a lot of angst amongst the ruling class, and that's why you see a Trump, who gets elected. Like he went too far, and trying to save face with Biden.
He says a quiet part out loud.
He says,
but would you? Okay, so I think Trump is a run of the mill. I think Trump is a run of the mill at this point Republican, and I say that because I don't think he did anything too far out of the realm that what we've seen before. And
you can compare it. Yeah, go ahead.
If you stop me.
He did the insurrection, man. That's pretty bad.
Yeah,
that was an honor code violation right there.
Yeah.
That's the reason why the ruling class doesn't like that dude. But if you look at remember when Trump is said to have said, we never heard it, that Haiti and there were these shithole African countries. He's supposed to have said that. We never heard it. It wasn't even said on a hot mic. Joe Biden on Charlie Rose says in 1994, I don't care if Haiti falls into the ocean or raises 3,000 feet in the sky. And not a big deal. I'm not going to care. That to me is worse than shithole countries in private, because your ass said that shit on camera. Yeah. On one of the biggest political pundit shows of the time.
I think if the debate is on the individual merits of the person's character, I mean, they both get a failing grade. It's more in regards to Trump was president waving the banner of the Blue Lives Matter flag and, the Proud Boys and white nationalists. And especially in, he was
But do you think Trump really cared about them people though?
But it doesn't matter though. The point is they were his base. Yeah. They were like
they organized. I mean, he inspired him.
But how can you be?
I can't tell you how emboldened some white people like I know in the South but like the sense of empowerment to go like to say I get it. Like I really like I feel like there's some on the left like Jimmy Dore, for instance, like who goes too far trying to act as if like. It's like Biden is just as bad. We're talking about individuals, but I'm talking about for whatever reason Trump tapped into it a movement, a psyche where I'm talking about like redneck kids that like I knew like through some sports or connections or just being up to parties in high school around Jacksonville, Florida, and I just know that like in that world, still seeing people on social media and just knowing the ideology that comes out of that sort of a neo-Confederate like. Ultra reactionary ideology you get in the South, former Confederacy. It's like Trump was like they viewed as an expression of like a vassal, an imperfect vassal carrying out God's work to push back against like the idea. So it's not like obviously Joe Biden is probably said a lot more racist things, but I mean to me it's just about I feel like the movement he represented and the idea, the sense of impunity people felt like white people, like a lot of white people in the South. Like I think was a different dynamic everywhere. Yeah. I'm just speaking of experience, Pacific Northwest. But
I didn't know that there was fucking like white people and white Republican Trump supporters in like Portland.
Yeah,
Portland was in, but that's the thing. It's like cats got to remember Portland was in the cover of Time magazine, either 93 or 95, as one of the most racist cities in America. Yeah. As a person that's gone to Portland entirely too many times, I'll say this on a hot mic. Portland is like Atlanta for white people.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Yeah, versus the reputation that's been branded.
But I mean, in terms of like Proud Boys, like I definitely see it from the segregationist aspect because I mean, literally, I think black people went there because of the railroads. After
they wouldn't let cats live there till like the 50s.
It's like 10%, but yeah, it's
like Portland is not. It's
no, yeah.
Organized
synthetic left, synthetic
Portland.
Left,
some of my best friends are from Portland.
But yeah, I lived in Seattle 15 years. The same way. Same way.
Hell yeah.
I mean, yeah, same way. Liberal seeming city that I actually predict after this is going to have a really hard right swing. Like I actually predict Seattle taking a really hard right swing after,
well, they're fighting against Kshama Sawant, that's which is her rise is interesting. But back to when it comes back to just like hateful rhetoric, because I kind of want to stay on that point. Yeah. Because I think we miss over time the hateful rhetoric of other politicians. Yeah. That even in a modern context, I think I'm a little bit older than all you guys. I'm 43, and I'm not saying that because I know more. I'm just older. Yeah. Bill Clinton, when he was giving his speech is that what do they call? I can't think right now. State of the Union.
Yeah.
He was giving a State of the Union. I want to say it was around 96-ish, right before the immigration reform starts. Remember, we get walls with Clinton.
Yeah,
we don't have walls before that. You know why those walls are strategically placed? Is so people die in the desert and they don't want to come.
Right.
That's why walls are placed. Yeah. So we get walls with Clinton. If you listen to that inauguration speech, it's pretty much we're not getting their best rapists and murderers.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is Trump doesn't cover the rhetoric, and those guys to me didn't do a great job of covering the rhetoric either.
No, yeah. I guess
there's just something about him and this moment that we're in, and maybe it's a moment of frustration that we're in collectively.
But I just see it as not so much Trump the individual. I think you're spot on that, there's like the stuff Clinton, Biden's history, like even other Republicans, out of the Reagan era, you could say objectively. But I think for whatever reason, there's this fear, this fear of for whatever Trump, of course he didn't have any designs on following through the stuff. But I was there talking to people at the Capitol, interviewing some people. I went out with Max Blumenthal. He got there earlier, but you realize these people are not working. These people are not working class, though, man. That's
not all of them.
Most of them are there. It was a mixed party. I think it's such a myth that these guys, they're business owners. They were flying in. They were flying in. That had the myth that these are all the we can organize these people. I don't believe that.
With Trump, they were all the voters over 100,000. All went to Trump.
A woman I know personally that I did not know was a Trump supporter. Took pictures of the shit and put it up on social media. So here I am, right? So by the way, that the day that was going to happen, I was supposed to interview the great Mike Davis.
Oh,
Mike Davis hits me up and goes, "Hey man, can we reschedule the interview? I'm watching this bullshit with the Capitol." Fuck, fine. My mama called me. My mom was like, "You watching this bullshit with the Capitol?" And I'm like, "Fine, I'll fucking watch this bullshit with the Capitol." So I'm mad my interview is canceled. You know how hard this shit is to do to get motherfuckers to come on your show.
Well, just
I'm watching this shit and I'm kind of in awe. My girl works in the corporate sector of medical research. So this is going on and she's having Zoom meetings and nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's whatever, right? It's I need to close the door because she's on a work call. Hold
on. Well,
yeah, I don't. At least on the part of Trump,
but she had selfies, bruh. And I'm like, she goes, Facebook won't let me post any videos, and comments are pouring through what the fuck are you doing there? We didn't know you were like this. Da, 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 da. She didn't see anything wrong with what she saw. It was a beautiful thing to her. She's taking pictures from the top of the fucking Capitol. I'm sitting here because the last time I saw her, we were on tour. We're going to make a long drive. And she goes, no, I'll get you a hotel room. It's all good, and hung out, and sweetest person I know would never in a million years think this person had went down the rabbit hole of like evangelical Trumpism, and it stemmed from like a religious evangelical point. But I wouldn't call her well-to-do. I wouldn't call her any sort of, if anything, I would call her.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm not speaking universally. I'm talking about there's tiers within it. There really are. Like there's people that were like tactical, operational people. Mm-hmm. There were people that were just kind of there because like they've grown up in these sort of towns, and like there were a few younger kids. There was like maybe two kids I talked to. They're like 18, 19. You could tell like hadn't had any exposure to anything else from some small Appalachian town. And they were probably the only two people I thought had any prayer of like, redeeming. They were out there actively like, doing stuff that day, just because like the conversations you're having, it's like you're not even on the same planet. It's like, defund everyone. The anger they were saying, start saying fuck the blue and shit. As soon as it gets turned back on them, it's too in their minds. It's like I don't think it's like Trump's like, you're right, like materially all that like different, or whatever. And like, of course, the Russiagate media and all this crap, like, is going to make it even his impulse is to like not proliferate some of these wars, say some of that shit. The Russiagate stuff was making sure he wasn't going to buck the military industrial complex, to put the loyalty oath type stuff.
But that was the best thing for him, right? The best thing for him in that movement that you guys are talking about with the Capitol. That's like the Russiagate and the bullshit that was Russiagate kind of gives you, it reinforces a lot of that QAnon silliness.
Yeah, so there's layers within Trump supporters. There's people that just vote for him. Like people, I worked with, like there's a few teachers, and it's like it's just people. I don't know, Mike. There's some people that just aren't that conscious. Really, there's football people we know that voted for Trump that like aren't like the fascists that like we're talking about that are like the organized political.
They're on some silly tax shit, right? They're like, well, Republicans are good for your taxes,
or they just don't even pay attention to politics much, but they just don't like Democrats or some shit. I don't know, but it's maybe. I don't know. It's like, look, to me, it's just like the main point is we all agree that this two-party system's a sham. It's and like we don't have this a two-party duopoly.
That's the problem though with people like Candace Owens, and even though we kind of look at her as a bit of a joke, she is to an extent. But this black rightward shift gains more ground than people think, and you really see it in like Ice Cube and Puffy trying to start their own parties or withholding their own votes, because it's just a lot of black capitalism.
Mike, you want to respond to that?
I think Ice Cube and I think that's the remnants of like black people trying to start have their own type of independence from the traditional like democratic kind of hegemony of that being the institution by which black people express their political viewpoint. I think Ice Cube actually met with Joe Biden 2 weeks ago, which I think vindicated what he did, because of course they were all saying that he was a Trumper. He's trying to defend. It's just like,
he's just a capitalist.
Yeah, he's a capitalist. I think objectively, black capitalism has been oppressed by white supremacy and imperialism.
Really?
Yeah, you may have like hundreds of black capitalists that exist and thousands that may exist, but to the point of there is no. What black food production companies do you know? What black owned like telecom companies do you know of?
I don't know about the ownership, but if we were to really dig in and see about like black CEOs, it's kind of foolish.
You got rich black people.
It's kind of foolish to think that there isn't a black ruling class, and it's also kind of foolish to not think that like even Richard Nixon.
I don't think there is a black ruling class.
There is. Yes, there is.
Oh,
yes, there is.
Who?
You don't think that there are black people in the ruling class? You think
yes, there are black people in the ruling class. It's different than saying there's a black ruling class. Those are two different statements.
Like a parallel black.
Like, how about this?
Obama is
okay. I just got.
He's a part of the ruling class. That doesn't necessarily mean that black people are part of the ruling class.
Time out. There's a black ruling class. You can't just say again. You're all black people into the ruling class. There's not all white people in the ruling class. The racial wealth gap, when you take out the top 10% of the racial wealth gap of black and white people, it's pretty fucking even. It doesn't really exist the way it's purported to exist.
I don't see how you can say that. Like,
because I can say that because it's statistically true. When you take out the top 10% of wage earners that are white, that number drops significantly. Same thing for black people. Number drops significantly.
I'm just not sure what that proves. So does that prove that black people as a people and as a nation isn't economically deprived of capital
more than others?
But this is getting down to like the issue of like
because they are black or because they are poor, or are they poor because they're black?
It's a combination of two. It's because they're black, they're part of an oppressed class of people. They can also, as a part of being, so you can be black and rich and still face discrimination. And
that doesn't mean anything. Who gives a shit? I don't give a shit. You give a shit that Oprah can't buy an $80,000 purse because somebody thought she was poor?
I think LeBron's kids shouldn't have nigger paying on their house. I think Henry Louis Gates.
So all of a sudden, LeBron's kids have the same problems as me. I would love to have
the main problem, but don't have. I think that's kind of. I think that type of viewpoint alienates bringing a multi-class movement together, like the civil rights movement. What was that? That wasn't just poor black people. That was middle class sort of black people. Like
a lot of gains.
What are national liberation movements in general? It isn't just, you know what I mean? It's like multi-class.
But you can't say that no black people got gains through the civil rights movement. You can't say that all the gains from the civil rights movement went to a certain petite bourgeoisie.
I think you're right. It definitely benefited the black capitalists more in the sense that they were able to access the market and shit like that. But
Richard Nixon wanted black capitalism. Richard Nixon, if I could find the clip, sounds like Louis Farrakhan. He wants black banks too because it's control. So to think that there's no black capitalist
so what
class,
they do is they use black capitalism to individually target certain black like capitalists or black petty bourgeois forces towards, don't fight, get investment, become a
part of the ruling class at that point. That's like my beef with Killer Mike.
I don't know.
But y'all realize I think you're talking past each other. I know Mike. Well, it's like this is like he's not talking about advocating just straight black capitalism, man. He's talking about like historically the thesis that like Harry Haywood, wrote about in like the Black Bolshevik that like because of like there's a difference in a national question versus like nationalism, and it's like there's a difference in advocating a race-based like nation state versus like they're being oppressed, an oppressed Chicano nation, These are not like white supremacy. Like is like an ideology that's like along with anti-communism that's sort of like centered the idea, really the ideological framework and political education of so many generations for hundreds of years. So I just think that like there's a difference versus like the naive idea of like. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Killer Mike's thing, like, I agree. Like the idea that just like you're gonna buy up your own block, gentrify your block, like Jay-Z. I mean, I don't think that's not gonna be revolution. It's about build. You couldn't do that. It's like there's got to be a multinational alliance of oppressed people.
You can't do that. The black capitalist shit will never be successful because white supremacy will literally not allow you to do that. Like, there's a reason why Jay-Z pisses and moans about fucking what was his title not being able to compete with Apple. Kanye pisses and moans about Nike's trying to screw him over and being racist to him because of Adidas. I don't care about that. Like I don't care about their dreams.
But my point about that is it
shows that they can't dominate the market.
But that's white supremacy isn't stopping those guys from dominating the market. Those are just bad. You can't jump up in one day and say I have this platform that's brand new and I want to dominate the market. He ended up selling Tidal, from my understanding.
Yeah. I'm not talking about individual instances of racism. I mean, I'm talking about systemically, this country founded like on money that like in slave houses and stuff that was never like really expropriated after the Civil War. Knowing how Reconstruction was taught in the South where I'm growing up, and like how when I grew up and how it was just sort of taught as this like terrible time, and that like, you know, the federal government like did all this, you know, oppressed like Southerners, and it was just like white Southerners. It's like crazy because like there's the central power structure of the U.S. out of like the from the early days of the Republic are like old, like, you know, certain families like that really became wealthy in the Gilded Age and stuff. And there's an establishment, and like, yeah, black people have, like, you know, as individuals entered into it. It's just like, I feel like it's just like such a minority to act as if like that's rivaling the power of Chase and the financial institutions and Wall Street, and like the notion that that's all like London and Wall Street is still not something. Yeah, they recognize they have to incorporate black capitalism, but it's like, aren't those people just like black members of like the ruling class itself? I think
that's my point, that there is the black members of the ruling class protect the ruling class, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, a story just came out in the New York Times, and I think think this is kind of to our point. Mm-hmm. There's a college somewhere up by Nate, Smith College.
Yeah.
Okay, and there was a black girl there, and she started a bunch of race. Like, she said that people were being racist to her for the entire year that she was there because of one incident. Apparently, a janitor and a campus police officer asked her who she was and why she was where she was. She wrote a Facebook post being upset about the situation, and she deals with this shit all the time. And racism, white supremacy, whatever fucking buzzwords you wanted to throw in there, she threw it in there. The dean was scared, had a big apology. They did a huge investigation. And guess what they found out? Number one, she was in an area she wasn't supposed to be in. She was literally warned, hey, we closed this area off, because she was there for like a summer thing that she was doing, and they had a bunch of young children. And they were like, well, since these young children are here in this cafeteria, we're not going to have any staff in this area. She's a well-to-do college student, so the people that work at the college are afraid of the college students because they don't want to lose their job. These people aren't black or Latin. Some of them were white in this story. So here is a black girl who is scaring white people with her wealth and status. I can take your job for complaining. All right, bitch, you want to fucking sit over there in the corner? Sit over there in the corner, but I warned you. She goes and sits in the corner where she's not supposed to be. A janitor sees her. He was told, hey, if anybody from the community is sitting around in this part where they're not supposed to be, because we have children here, call campus security. Don't go try to fix it yourself. The dude had bad eyes. He calls campus security. He goes, yeah, I think there's a man here. I don't know the man here. Campus security comes. The girl says in her Facebook post that she was frightened for her life because campus security has a firearm, and that firearm could have killed her. Well, campus security doesn't carry firearms. No firearms on the cops. But she wrote that she was scared for her life, and everybody fucks with her because she's black.
So
now, what's the larger point? Lose their job. People lost their job. They can't get work now in the community because they're racist.
Assholes, you know. That doesn't disprove that white supremacy. You know, like I'm sure.
When I'm saying though, but my whole point about like white,
you know what I mean. Like, yeah.
My point about white supremacy being like the end all be all, like it's this thing.
I know that. I think it's a combination of white supremacy and capitalism. You know,
I mean,
I think people get lost in the thinking like, oh yeah, it's capitalism is the root. Capitalism is the material, like is the toolkit, is the frame of the shitty house. You know, but white supremacy is the coat of paint, the roof. Like it's an ideology that you know, in the sense that under capitalism, And anytime you have like these, like how the British described the Scottish and the Irish, when they were trying to subjugate them and take their land, they described them as savages and, whatever, which has created this, that narrative. And with Black people, it was you're inferior, you're less than. We have to create laws to prove that and codify that in education and everything else, while using that as the basis for why they are, paying white workers less, because they got slaves, or not paying Black people. The people making money is the capitalists at the end of the day. So they kind of use it just like psychologically, you know what I'm saying? But also it creates real situations. So I'm sure like that girl who has come from prestige and a more affluent class, like petty bourgeois class, I mean, I'm sure they have instances in which they can allow their money to,
But here we go. When we talk about like white supremacy, and we don't like this situation, to me is interesting because to me it blows a lot of that shit up. Because again, here you have a Black girl in a university that literally is holding all the power to the point where the dean is firing people. So
white supremacy wouldn't be a factor if that was equal for everybody. And I'm not saying that makes any type of sense. I'm not saying you want a situation in which bougie girls or bougie guys at college can like get the service worker fired. Like fuck that. Like fuck those kids. MFTK.
Shout out to James Coleman.
But I'm saying that you have that one instance of the African American or the Black girl, maybe crying, prejudice when it didn't exist, or saying that it just doesn't compare to the other instances in which you have, there aren't a lot of like that.
We just don't know about them. But here's the thing: we just don't know about them.
We got to get the sports soon, man. But no. I want to say one thing. If you want to wrap up on that point, that just like all I can say is like a big part of what like turned me from a kid who was 18 years old in Jacksonville, Florida, and just turned 18 and voted for George W. Bush, and hung out at farm parties, in 2004, and like, and people like had Black teammates and stuff, but also like white kids would go hunting and fishing, and like, I mean, it is, I can't. It's like, I mean, I'm so blessed that, and I feel grateful that I got out of that there were different forces, but that mentality where it ended up taking it to the fraternity scene in college, and you really see it materialize where it's like, it is in the South, at least in the Southeast where I grew up, very much there's no integration into the Greek system type stuff. And it's like, there's an idea, like I just straight up with like a whole bunch of people like that I went to school with, that if you date like anything multi-racial, it's like very, and it's not like and the idea is that Blacks are like, they're fearful of Black empowerment on a very deep level, and these people have a lot of power in the sense of like their parents are, people are politicians and high, upper middle class type, positions, and thankfully my parents weren't like that, but I told you about my granddad and stuff, and it's like, so to me, that's what made like a lot of this make sense, because I was exposed and saw so much, heard the N-word so much, white people just like say there's teammates like at Florida State, when my brother was playing, one in particular, I don't want to get sued right now, but I'll tell you off camera, but like, he was a prominent player, white guy, and like he would hang out with like a lot of like, different just Black teammates and stuff like that, and be cool and whatnot. But as soon as he would get like in a situation where like there wasn't around, the N-word starts popping out. This kid was very privileged too. Like, I'm gonna start narrowing it down if I keep going. But
isn't that what happened to Riley Cooper? Was that his name? Riley
Cooper in Florida with the Philadelphia Eagles and stuff. Yeah, but it's like those are like individual examples. But for me, I started realizing like the race. It's like, it's a social construct, but it's like also a social construct that just like it's built generations upon generations have been built on that fallacy. Therefore, it's like, even though it's not real, it's like the idea that we just like, I feel like just totally reduce it just to class is
it's
problematic.
Not about
I understand
just the class, because I of course believe racism exists. I've experienced it. I've had the barrels of guns pointed at me by law enforcement. But I've also dealt with black people that are equally pretty harmful. And if we look at like our, as Ta-Nehisi Coates puts it, our 8 years in power, right? That's a black president
who supports Israel,
black
hardcore,
DOJ,
by the way.
Right? And if you look at places like Baltimore, you're talking about like black mayors, black Congress people, black chief of police, black cops whooping on them.
But you know what the difference is, though, man? In Alabama, like Selma, Alabama. Go ahead.
Well,
I'm just saying it's
you got a neo-colonial situation. I mean, that's not, I don't think that's indicative of like those, who runs Baltimore. It definitely isn't black people,
There is a black political class in Baltimore that gets
but
just like Jim Clyburn doesn't run South Carolina.
But I mean, a political class,
exactly.
But they're a minority compared to the masses of black people. And
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't look at it from the standpoint of the faces. The faces is what they use to fool black people into thinking that we have insight and like buy into this.
Okay,
well, we don't.
Let's say the same thing about white supremacy. Then, if there's only 400 white people that run everything, and there's literally 300 million people in this country, a lot of them are white, then those 400 people are really the faces. And what are those other people? They're just lumping?
The pawns of white supremacy. That doesn't take away from white supremacy.
What do they get out of white supremacy? We can go right now to the homeless.
It doesn't have to make sense, though. It's crazy. People do stuff against their own interests. Like Nat Turner, like you looked at like that shook terror into like the white ruling class, slave owning class of 1831. So after that, they made it their number one mission to destroy any chance of like, solidarity between like oppressed white people.
Let's just talk. But
think about real quick, Selma, Alabama. They have all black mayors, sheriffs, and everything. 80% black people, but all the land is still like overwhelmingly owned by like the same white families that owned it back in the Civil War. That was been passed down.
There's a black political class.
But
that is in place to keep certain black people in their place.
Right. Well,
And one thing Pascal, my co-host, always says is he always asks this question and kind of rhetorically, is black politics the politics of containment?
Like sort of like those leaders are essentially in charge of controlling of doing the bidding of like the ruling class.
Toure called me up and reminded me of something today. He said when Jesse Jackson said from now on black people will be called African American in 1988, none of us got a questionnaire if that was the preferred name we wanted. Jesse Jackson proclaimed from his perch that that's what we were going to be called. And that's what we've been, for the most part, right, go by in politically correct circles per Jesse Jackson.
I don't know. I mean,
so it's like there's a ruling class.
No one's ever corrected me for not saying black.
Say again, bro. I couldn't hear you, brother.
No, Jesse. I mean, I think there is always the anti-Al Sharpton, anti-Jesse Jackson sentiment. I mean, who do they represent? I mean, they have no rule over anything. There's popular pundits, popular, activists who have relationships with, some news stations and stuff, but
they get things done. Again, like Jim Clyburn doesn't exist in a vacuum of he's just an old black man that says a few things at church. You have to get certain material things done for your constituents, even if we may not agree with whatever those material things is on those constituents are, but he gets enough things done where he can deliver votes, and that's a problem, right?
Well, I mean, think about it. Maybe Jim Clyburn when he first was elected. I think he was a lawyer for there was a movement in Charleston in regards to a big medical hospital strike. I think he was kind of around. So I think he was. I mean, now he's a power broker in the Democratic Party and like sells out the movement. I mean,
huge.
He was integrated into the machine. I don't think that means. I think that's his example doesn't really. It proves that there needs to be some type of self-determination.
Tom Bradley in the 80s in Los Angeles. There is a long list of black political figures that have sold
out. Protects power.
What does that have to be with the issue of self-determination for like people in like oppressed parts of the Black Belt South that are like still living under like feudal conditions and stuff? These issues don't even relate to them. They don't.
Well, it relates to them in the sense of the black people that were speaking on behalf of black people, especially when laws started to get passed to have longer sentences.
True, fair. No,
those were black people that were saying, yes, lock up these drug dealers longer. Yes, we need a 3 strikes law. Yeah. Yes, this violent crime has to stop. And the reason why I say Boys in the Hood is a problematic film is because one of the early scenes in the movie is when the cops don't show up. And I don't know if you guys remember growing up where I grew up out here in a city called Richmond, California, where there was a lot of shootings. The cops didn't show up. And that was the main thing. The cops don't show up. James Foreman Jr. wrote a great book called Locking Up Our Own that tells the story of black people saying, if we just had cops that look like us, then maybe they would know the good ones from the bad ones and we wouldn't have these problems. And a lot of the problems that we have go back to when there were certain laws coming down to like legalize things like marijuana. Cats wouldn't listen. They were like, no, it's a gateway drug to heroin. And that gave us a lot of the laws that we have now in places like DC, which trickled all the way down throughout the country. And eventually you get 1994. 94 does not happen in a vacuum, especially look at the 80s in Los Angeles.
And the crime bill, of course, for people just jumping in.
People always go crime bill, but it's like there was so many laws before the crime bill that were in place.
Yeah.
No doubt. So this is the conversation we're going to have to pick up again because, this is these are things that need to be struggled through and talked about, quite frankly, because a lot of times people no, it's cool, man. But let's pivot to sports though, and then we can come back to this stuff on another issue. Because I think close out. Yeah. No, Jason, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to say I appreciate all y'all.
Yeah, man, that's good.
I think people can have slight disagreements, and still be part of the same movement. So I appreciate all y'all. We're still part of the same.
Facts, man. I mean, and honestly, once you realize a lot of it, so many of the things that divide people, are a lot of times semantic, and then once they kind of root down, you get to realize that the same core understanding of shit is overwhelmingly the same.
I mean, when you already told me this man Michael is trying to do community policing organizing, I'm always going to be behind that 100%.
Yeah, community control of the police.
Community control.
I'm behind that double 100%.
That is an important.
I have your back. This little bullshit disagreement we have on the particular.
I don't think it's a disagreement. Jason, I don't think it's a disagreement. I think it's I think we're getting lost in semantics. I
agree.
Yeah. When I share the hatred of the sellout, leaders. I think we have a difference in who we think is a sellout. I think the hatred towards Jesse Jackson that a lot of people have. I think some of it's right. I think most of it comes from a kind of right wing and doctrine, like a right wing place, because how they've kind of throughout the years slandered his name and other people. Al Sharpton. I mean, Al Sharpton
seems worse than Jackson. I'm not basing it on anything scientific. Just in terms of, I feel like they I don't know, Sharpton with Comcast, NBC. It just seems like.
He has a show. He's a liberal. He has a show. I mean, and he goes to speak at some events. I mean, I mean the families. I've never heard of families of victims shitting on him. I think when he comes, he shows support. I don't think he. I think a lot of that stuff is possible.
In Ferguson, though, you were in Ferguson, Mike. What weren't some of the Ferguson cats not be like, get out of here?
They didn't tell who they didn't tell.
Tell Geraldo that he lost, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know. Al Sharpton, Geraldo, he in Baltimore.
Oh yeah,
that was hilarious. Yeah, that was hilarious.
Geraldo the march on the DNC. So me and Dave's cousin, me and Nate's cousin Dave Snyder. He's also an activist. He's a trade unionist. And Jackson,
Mike, make the distinction though between community control and the community policing, because the politics, they kind of throw those out there interchangeably sometimes, and it's important.
Community control of the police from the is the idea of like the right of Black people as well as other oppressed and poor people to be able to control how their communities is policed. It comes from the Black Panther Party. Actually pushed it out in Richmond. Yeah, they pushed it out. Yeah, Berkeley, Richmond, that whole area. They actually was almost successful, but you know the cop unions and stuff really waged the struggle against it, getting a lot of telling lies and stuff. It essentially makes it so that you have an all-elected board of people from the community. It can't be any ex-cops. It can't be anyone within the relationship to cops who have the power to sit on the board that will have the power to like hire, fire, police, defund and abolish if they deem necessary, to have the power to do that. So that's kind of the what community control of the police is. Community policing is a model pushed by the cops as well as the ruling class about, cops used to be our neighbor's friend, Mr. Officer Joe down the street. We used to come in and smoothies. So it's the idea we need to do more community walks, barbershop talks, had a sheriff walking, shaking hands and kissing babies, but doesn't really change the fundamental relationship between people.
It's sort of like a snitch cultivating,
because it's like
farming out.
Especially,
it's
community policing is the police organizing the community and not the community organizing itself. You know what I'm saying? And of course, anytime they talk about community policing, they're always like, we need more money. We need more money to do more community policing. So it's just like it's
wild. Yeah. It's like
well, I wish you know what, if you fund, I had an audio podcast with a woman that works in drug rehabilitation, and we were talking about like defund the police and community policing. That became part of the conversation. And one of my big issues is the shit's never funded like cops are funded. If I want to bust your head in and fuck with poor people all day, I'm gonna give you all the money in the world to fuck with poor people.
Yeah, it's built in. Yeah, you just get
people's head in. But when I want to do shit like, I'll tell you a true story, and I'll be as quick as possible with it. So I'm working at this homeless shelter. It's an emergency shelter. It's a hotel. And to get inside, I don't know if you guys know, you have to answer questions to be homeless. You have to answer like 100 questions to be homeless. You got to be real fucked up to be officially quote unquote homeless. So if you were staying in the shelter, you had some fucking problems. You had a lot of health problems. You had what's called quote unquote chronic homelessness, and you only had some mental issues and a lot of drug addiction. It was a wet shelter, so you could have drugs. So around the first of the month, it got wild. Hotel is also in the middle of a dope spot. Not going to be in downtown. So a woman that had a lot of problems with alcohol and drugs, whose dude we pretty sure would pimp her out around the first, was fucked up one day. And whenever she would get fucked up, she'd get really violent. She was a very small woman, but she'd get very violent. And she kicked somebody's dog that I knew. And this woman who's got her dog kicked hollered my name. I go running around the corner to see what's up, and I see this little skinny Black woman that's, mad and drunk off her ass and on some other shit. And a problem's about to happen because eventually she's going to get fucked up. Now, I want her to go back to her room so she doesn't get fucked up, but she won't go back to her room. And I say, are you afraid to go back to your room because your dude beats you? And she breaks down in tears and says, yes. Now I can't have her out.
Yeah.
Because either she's going to try to stab somebody, which she has tried, or somebody's just going to fuck her up and might even end her.
Yeah.
And I call the police.
Yeah. Isn't that, oh man, it's
so they tell me, they say, hey, she's got a emergency response team that's going to come out and handle this. I go call the emergency response team. It's about 4:00 on a Friday. I remember this very fucking vividly. I get on the phone with them and they're like, yeah, what's up? I'm like, I got a lady here. Apparently she's one of the people that you guys can respond to. You got to come help me out. She's got a knife and something bad is going to happen. He's like, she got a knife? I said, yeah. He goes, man, call the police. I said, I don't want to call the police. She's got a knife. Well, it's 4:00 on a Friday, man. We ain't coming out there. We just don't have the people. Eventually, another woman that was also in the life was able to take her back to her room and calm her dude down so she didn't get whooped on going back to her room. But we had to contain her because nothing good was going to happen with her running the room.
Yeah, right. Or the cops showing up. Yeah.
Or the cops showing. And the cops, for the most part, didn't really do shit because right now in the age of COVID, we're seeing real-time redlining because they're like, look, I don't want to catch this killer disease.
Yeah, it is wild.
You'll do what you do. And I give a fuck. And it fucked me up because I said, well, here's the thing that everybody's fighting for, right? To defund the police so we have these mental health counselors that come respond to mental health episodes. And here I'm being told that this program doesn't have enough money to have anybody to come out to help me with this woman. And ultimately, if we're not trying to change the material conditions of people, what are we really going to do other than create some sort of revolving door where we throw them in the county hospital for 72 hours and kick these motherfuckers right back out into the streets?
Yeah, facts, man. No doubt. That's real, man.
Like, and that's where the conversation has to go. And that's where when Michael talks about community policing and really getting involved and changing the way we look at things like poverty, changing the way we look at things like mental health as a community, then you can see a change in these behaviors.
Yeah. Real resources, man. Like that are,
man, you have to. But my fear is that either this shit's going to get totally underfunded, and then they're going to go, "We tried," because again, that's what happens. That's one of the big reasons that Reagan gets his rise.
Yeah.
California's governor, because the governor before is a New Deal governor that's all about these programs. But that goes back to the Moynihan report. And if I'm asking the wrong questions, I'm going to constantly get the wrong answers.
Yeah, no doubt. You're right, man. And then you're going to sell out Democrats that are going to say that are going to run on $2,000 checks or run on doing these promises. This shit doesn't happen. It sets the stage for the GOP to win and us to move further to the right. But anyways, we got to switch the sport real quick because I got to there's something kind of wild I wanted to get your take, and then we'll go around the horn from me to like Mike. And then my story is just kind of a funny one here at first. It's starts off with this New York Rangers thing, and our Timmy Panarin, all right, takes leave of absence from Rangers following fabricated story from Russian press. So it's like, it's now coming out that, he's having to take a leave because he was a Navalny supporter. Yeah. So he was basically that now it's coming out of Russia that he beat up an 18-year-old girl in 2011, right? So the New York Post, as Larry Brooks reports this, breaking news, Panarin's taking a leave of absence from the Rangers in the aftermath of political hit piece against them from Russia, alleging that he beat up an 18-year-old girl in Russia in 2011. So the Rangers then come out like vehemently denying all this, standing with the player, of course. And then, you got like hotel, spokesperson. Those multiple sources have told me that but no such incident occurred. I don't know exactly the details, but what's really wild, though, is when you go to this cat, and I gotta switch up how I'm sharing this because it's let's go stop here. But Keith Olbermann, all right, that's who I'm getting to. And Keith Olbermann, whose brain has been like deteriorating for a long time, right? All right, a long time. All right, goes with the most unhinged Russiagate like thing ever. It's like tied into like sport world. It's like, bro, this is like so.
I want to hear this.
Rich. This is rich, man. Like, and so Olbermann.
Oh, you see Obama's Bruce Springsteen show?
Yeah, he got a rep.
Some thing where he's talked about he punched somebody in the nose for calling him a C word. He couldn't even stand up to Republicans. You telling me he punched somebody in the face?
Lies. He always
yeah. So listen to this though.
This tweet right here.
This is rich, Jason. I got to get your reaction in real time here. So Keith Olbermann, here we go, former co-host of the Big Show with Dan Patrick on SportsCenter. February 22nd at 3:19 in the afternoon, just on the East Coast, decides he's going to say, I've lived my entire life with the strain of Russian heritage in my family. Then came their conspiracy to alter the 2016 election. A year later, they hacked my computer. But now they've attacked my boy, Panarin. So I'll make it official. Fuck you, Vladimir Putin. #NYR. Go Rangers.
Wait a minute. So why is there a stain of his Russian heritage? Like, what's wrong?
All right. Well, what other racial or ethnic group would it be acceptable and polite, like liberal society discourse, to like just say the stain of like my, of someone's Nigerian heritage, the stain of what if you're like the stain of someone's Congolese heritage, right? A white guy,
but like the stain of my Italian heritage. Yes.
Is that the stain? Is that the stain? Yeah. Is that the stain of czars? Is that the stain of Bolsheviks? Is that the stain of oligarchs? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, what stain? Because it's all different.
That kid's definitely a fucking Nazi. Like that guy.
That Rangers player.
Yeah, I mean, why you stand with the guy who called Muslims cockroaches that need to be exterminated? Why?
Yeah. I mean, it's why is Overton doing that?
Is he a 9/11 guy in your opinion? That's like after 9/11, he kind of, I wouldn't say flipped, but kind of just definitely went down a dark.
Not necessarily, but what he did. Man. Oh, you're talking about the Rangers player, right?
I'm talking about the guy in Russia.
Yeah. So the New York Rangers, like we're talking about, the New York. His name's Panarin. All right,
Mike. Are you talking about the hockey player or the politician? Navalny.
Yeah, the politician.
No, Navalny. Yeah. All right, so Navalny is. Yeah, he said horrible things about people from the Caucasus. Yeah. He said awful things about like all them cockroaches. He went out and shot a guy with 15 rubber bullets and emptied a clip into him. Like Yasha Levine reported it. Immigrants as a weapon. Like he got kicked out of the Liberal Party he was in. The idea, what he does is talk totally about, Putin. Putin is just everything. It's like we get rid of Putin, everything's fine. Totally leaving out the fact that the U.S. with shock doctrine, putting Boris Yeltsin in, literally letting Boris Yeltsin like bomb his freaking parliament. The 1993 it was democratically elected, and called it, and then had the New York Times championing that as a win for democracy.
I think the whole thing with Naval, it makes you seem why, like, even during Hitler's rise, they are how the United States was kind of silent, complicit, because they still had a lot of.
Not all the rich were complicit. Were silent, I should say.
Yeah, you have some who are actively perpetrating it, but the U.S. is totally cool with supporting the fascists in Russia if it gets Putin out of power. Because
apparently Navalny in Russia is kind of a joke.
He's hated. Yeah, he is very low popular.
He doesn't have the support that.
He's no popular.
I was going to say, you guys are making fun of our leading opposition leader with his 3% polling.
The thing is, the Communist Party actually came in second in the last elections. They aren't really talking about that. They aren't really saying, the Communist Party is emerging.
Yeah, because that's not an opposition party to what they want. Right,
well, because they're the same as fascist, right? It's a red-brown alliance, so we can't even talk about them, right? That's why we blew up the parliament in 1993. We just and we called it a win for democracy. Check out the Radio War Nerd episode. That Mark Ames actually was in Russia at the time and was able to break it down because he was out there that day. It's you just don't hear any of that shit, Western media.
We've been doing some foreign policy episodes lately, and we did one last night that I'll tell you about, Nate. That was a lot over my head. I definitely getting into Russian politics coupled with Chinese politics coupled with U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East in relation to the Kurds in Turkey. Coupled with China's response to that, it's an interesting talk when you actually talk with people that are inside the machine. And we have a guy, and if you want him to come on your show, I'll ask him. He's a great guy to have on, and we have foreign policy questions because he actually worked in the State Department.
Yeah, what's his name?
His name is I can't pronounce his last name.
It's all good.
It's a long Polish last name, but Kuba is his name. We just did the show last night. Kuba Ruzhevsky. And he actually worked inside of the military-industrial complex. Mm-hmm. So it's not just rhetoric. He actually talks about the inner world of it and why it is a problem.
Right.
And that was kind of the conversation when talking about Russia and China and the Belt and Road Initiative and getting into Uyghur stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
We did a whole other about that.
It's powerful, man, because we need, like, one thing I see, Danny Heifong and I talked about this, is that, like, despite LeBron's, like, liberalism, the one good, really great thing, the best thing he did was not succumb to, like, that Daryl Morey, Houston Rockets, like, China stuff, because it was all about trying to just, like, use NBA players as props. Like, you know, they, like, the ruling class always tries to use athletes to, you know, to push this, like, new Cold War, you know, like, type shit with China, instead of realizing that, like, you know, there's much more American people, working class people in this country don't have an interest in, like, you know, having a, you know, an escalation. I mean, just imagine if, like, the Chinese were doing military exercises off the coast in the Gulf of Mexico or off the coast of Virginia. I mean, we do that all the time, right? I mean, it's wild, man.
It's also, I mean, it's also a credit to China in regards to how powerful and expansive they built their basketball association, and how big of a market it is for NBA players in there. It's that the NBA can't, you know, like, decouple from China. You know, like, you could tell, like, it really pissed off Trump. It pissed off Pompeo when they, like, NBA, what the hell? You should be like, China. You know, like, go, like, Rick Scott. He's a piece of shit. He's my senator.
Senator.
Nate voted for him. He said Nate voted for him.
I know. Hey, it's not, man.
I'm not joking.
I never voted for that man.
But he's like, he's putting out letters. He's saying, like, the Olympics cannot be in Beijing with the human rights atrocities. And I'm just like, dude.
No, we had the Olympics in Atlanta with this state flag flying over the Georgia State House.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
the Confederate flag flying over the State House then in 1996?
Yeah. So from 1956 to 2001. This let me share this. This is like, just so, I mean, people that are just, this was literally the state flag of Georgia during the 1996 Olympics here, where you had, here you go.
I mean, it just becomes so obvious what that Uyghur shit is all about, you know?
This one, that right there. So, like, you know, we could have that in Georgia, right, with the 1996 Olympics, but Adrian Zen's a right-wing evangelical fanatic, right, who's got, like, he's on a mission from God, right, is able to go on Democracy Now! And speak authoritatively about stuff. So, like, I can tell we're about to go down a rabbit hole with this, man. But, like, shout out to Stephon Marbury, all right, for doing the great stuff he's done. Yeah, what's your question? Yeah,
I want to ask you a LeBron question. So, and I asked this of Danny when he was on my show some time ago last year, and he seems to be a bit of a fan. I look at LeBron as Jordan 2.0.
No, I don't see it that bad.
I think, well, the movie that his production company was part of filming, Bombshell, about the Fox News Roger Ailes scandal, was an amazing whitewashing of the reputation of those fascist Barbies. And
wait, yeah, tell me about the film then.
So Bombshell was about Roger Ailes was the guy that was running Fox News, and he was one
evil guy, man.
You know, pulling his crank out, making people blow him for jobs. And got sued by, I think it started off with some of the older women that were kind of quote unquote aged out, and then they made a movie about that whole case, and LeBron's production company was one of the production companies that was involved with it.
What about the Showtime series? That's different, because there was a Showtime series about Roger Ailes' downfall that was really good.
The series is different because I think that's Roger Ailes funded that. But this is LeBron's film company doing a movie that's a total whitewashing of how horrible these women actually are and how horrible Fox News is. Then you get Judas and the Black Messiah, and, you know, I've done chapter and verse on several shows about the way I feel about that movie. It's a good movie. I enjoyed it for the movie, but it's not. It's counter-revolutionary, in my opinion, in the sense of the same way Vietnam movies in the 80s were pro-war. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Justin, why don't you hop in?
Oh, no. I mean, I can see that point, because they only took shots at what's acceptable to take shots at right now. They only took shots. Yeah, they made the police look absolutely inept, and violent, and they could take shots at them, but they made the FBI look like, oh well, no, they actually just had their own Trump at that time. It was just this one guy. He was bad, but they wanted to do good. And
so I get I get a message in my inbox. I don't know how true this is. It's a message in my inbox. I don't usually get messages in my inbox like this, because I posted something on Jacobin's wall, because they posted something about every leftist should watch this movie. And I was like, I don't think so. Here's my critique. This guy, he goes, you know what? I came to troll anything positive I see about that movie because my brother-in-law wrote it. And I was like, oh, your brother-in-law Shaka King? He's like, nope, he's a white guy. And Shaka King maybe wrote 50 words of dialogue in that movie. And in our back and forth, he goes, the original story was supposed to be a redemption of Hoover.
Oh, wow.
Not the snitch.
Redemption of Hoover. Wow.
Of Hoover. And there's something to be said about this moral fight that the snitch is having that I just don't buy a snitch having. If you've ever been in an environment of nefarious activity, a lot of people tell on everybody. Bad people tell on other bad people about little lesser bad people so they can get a bit of more stuff. Right?
Yeah. How did this guy go from doing that at the beginning of the movie, right, to then at the end suddenly having this conscience that's just plaguing him, right? He didn't even know. Remember, they asked him straight up, and they emphasized the whole point that he wasn't a race man or whatever. He wasn't into that. He was just into jacking cars, getting what he could. He didn't want to be bothered with none of that, right?
That was his money,
right? So then suddenly he's pained at the end of it. That it did strike me as strange.
It's bullshit. It's bullshit. I mean, it's a great performance by Lakeith Stanfield. I've got to know him through Sorry to Bother You, and because of him, we got new
Boots Riley. Jason knows Boots Riley from the Oakland.
That's awesome.
So I have a special affinity for Lakeith Stanfield, and I think what we saw in that performance, the reason why it was so great, is you saw a man. He's like us. He knows what the fuck is up. You saw him fighting with his conscience, knowing that he's going to be remembered for this role of humanizing this horrible individual.
William O'Neill.
And again, LeBron has his stamp on that movie. LeBron is the one that stops, reportedly, the NBA labor strike with Obama. LeBron makes protest, and this is just my opinion, cool, but not really about anything. I'm gonna wear a hoodie because of Trayvon. Black Lives Matter. The NBA, maybe they're just better than the NFL at playing to their base. We'll let you people do whatever the fuck you want to do. Ain't shit finna change. But oh boy, you guys can feel real good about the shirt.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want within a certain boundary because nobody can put anything about no one's putting anything about imperialism or free Palestine on their jerseys or none of that. It was league approved protest.
But you can put group economics. But I know Mike's that. We've been through this before and stuff. It's just Mike, go ahead. Just say kind of your thing.
I understand. I don't think it's this. They aren't waving the communist flag out there and talking about the proletarian revolution. But I think it's definitely pissed off a bunch of racists, and it's pissed off Trump. It pissed off Republican. Let's say even with the Mark Cuban Star Spangled Banner shit. Let's say that's who cares about that? I don't give a shit about that, and I don't give a shit about you playing it, and what I'm saying, or not playing. I don't give a fuck. He's making that into a whole thing. Then the lieutenant governor's introducing a bill saying that you need to sell the Mavericks, get out of my state if you don't play the Star Spangled Banner. These players have polarized this shit that everywhere these fuckers go, they see it, and they can't. That's why they're so pissed and want their safe spaces. That's why they want they're making Outkick and their own outlets.
Jaylen Brown is doing some dope shit, man.
I think this LeBron is like hated by a lot of people. Like he's hated. I think there's a lot of natural hate towards LeBron because of the whole Tom Brady effect of him like being like number one in his craft. I think people naturally don't like him. Is LeBron liberal? Yeah, I think he's definitely liberal. But I think the difference between him and Jordan is monumental. Like LeBron is more in terms of the stances he's taken, because he can easily not say anything. He doesn't really have to say anything.
Yeah, I mean Jordan didn't, and that's kind of the point.
But LeBron has though.
You're muted, Jason.
LeBron condemned like people taking like Daryl Morey, the Houston Rockets GM, who tweeted out "Free Hong Kong." Like LeBron said he didn't know what he was talking about, and he didn't. LeBron wore.
People worry about what's happening here, like in their own country, instead of trying to.
Well, who's the first person to wear "I Can't Breathe" shirt on the basketball? You got to look at how this stuff looks.
He popularized it.
Regular people, apolitical, not like us, see "I Can't Breathe" shirt. They're comfortable expressing that too. They're comfortable saying, "Oh, we can't breathe. Police brutality is a problem." Like I think, these athletes aren't like leaders in the sense that we depend on them for political guidance. Like they don't really have LeBron politics wise. He probably don't even know who. You remember that time he talked about he had that Malcolm X biography.
Oh, and he was holding the book, and it's like they asked him what the book's like.
He was like, "Oh yeah, what's your favorite chapter?" He was like,
It's all good, bro.
I'm sure he was just bullshit. You're right on that. I'm sure a lot of it is bullshit, but I think that's the power of the movement, and I think he hasn't like sold it out like Herschel Walker or like some athletes have,
Jason, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted. But like these individual, the thing is with LeBron though, it's like I hear what you're saying. It's like I don't disagree. The strike thing, it's like he could do. There's things he could do better. But one thing about athletes, I knew this growing up in this like going AAU basketball circuit and just college football at the Division I level. It's like I'm impressed with like small things. I have a very like because seeing how there's such an effort by the athletic industry when they identify talent at a young age to kind of ensconce those guys, to keep them away from like really being engaged in any kind of it's really a challenge to become like politicized and be like a high level athlete. So it's not that I sound like a LeBron apologist. I'm not really trying to like. I share like your criticism.
I find myself apologizing for shitty people all the time because
I don't think he's a shitty person. Like, that's right. I guess
I have a problem with him. I don't know the motherfucker. He might be cool as shit. I'm like Mike though. I'm like Mike in the sense of sometimes I find myself defending people because sometimes I feel the hate is coming from the wrong direction, and it's not. You don't hate them because of their politics. You might hate them because it's just a brother that you don't like. Like Kaepernick,
he's empowered and he's got
definitely. And I agree with Mike 100%. Can I call you Mike? Is that okay?
No, that's fine.
Okay. When you say that LeBron suffers from the Tom Brady effect, that people just hate him because he's fucking LeBron James. There's something to be said about Kanye West is the same way. Like I definitely have issue with a lot of the shit that Kanye West says, but I know a lot of people hate Kanye West because he's fucking Kanye West. Like Jim Brown has horrible fucking politics.
Yeah.
He's also treated women really terribly in his
horribly. Life. It never gets talked about. Jim, watch that shitty fucking movie One Night in Miami. It was horrible.
Right.
Why the fuck was Obama playing Malcolm X? I don't know. Anyway.
Bro, what about his Israel shit with the NFL? I mean, Jim Brown was like on the trips with Bob Kraft, like Marshall Faulk, crying about getting to go to Israel and say, "Oh, I'm a black man in the Middle East. I didn't think I wanted to do this, but now I've been on this trip and like the Israel, it's the greatest
thing
ever."
Brown's politics fucking suck, but he's been involved with the black community in Southern California for some time. Yeah. He has done some good work, but overall, he has very far right fucking politics.
He's like socially conservative, yep.
Motherfucker's he's a right winger through and through. There's a great documentary. I shouldn't say great, I take it back. There's an entertaining documentary from 1984 called Black Hollywood, and Jim Brown is in it, bitching and moaning. But listen to Jim Brown bitch and moan in 1984. It's not too different from him bitching and moaning in fucking 2021. Oh, the Lester Maddox.
Yeah, this was wild, man. Like, I don't know, like that's one thing I got to say, like where he goes storms off. Lester Maddox, the segregationist governor of Georgia.
Jim Brown definitely knows fucking racism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
they had to get him off actually in that one. So it was here where it was just, I don't know. You all check it out some other time, but you see Lester Maddox, he's troll. It's there's some rich lines in there. I'll just put it that way. But I'll stop.
This is good. No, this is good.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to play it. No, they're going to play it. I was going to say that's a good clip. A lot of that old Dick Habit stuff is good. But my issue with LeBron is where Michael Jordan was apolitical. LeBron is a little bit more political, but I feel like his politics are the politics of containment.
All right.
Your movement's a slogan. Here's a T-shirt. We're gonna have a moment of silence, bitch. That's what you get.
I feel you on a one level. I do get. I'm really tired of the sloganeering, all the kind of superficial stuff. I don't quite like. I feel where you're coming from. I differ a little bit in terms of I don't think he's as. I think he's doing more harm, more good than harm. But I respect where you're coming from. And
I don't know what he's doing in LA. He could be doing great shit in LA. I'm not down there.
Yeah. I mean, his stuff he's done back in Ohio is pretty cool. But I mean, Justin, go ahead. Yeah.
It's like when the first episode I was on with just you, Nate, where we talked about, Cardinals history, that first, Augustus Busch ownership, where he didn't know he bought an all-white team. He thought he bought an integrated team, but he didn't. He bought an all-white team. And the first thing that he did was try to integrate it. Why? Not because it was the right thing to do and not because he believed in integrating the team, but because he had the number one selling beer with black people. Yeah. And that's what he cared about. So it's like you can do the right thing for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And I wonder about LeBron. I wonder about LeBron in that same way. And I'm not it's one of those things where it is none of us can say whether or not he personally believes in these movements because we don't know. We don't know him. We don't have access to him. We don't know. But is it advantageous for him to back them? 100%. It is advantageous for him to back them. I'm not trying to cast doubt that way. I'm just trying to say that there's no way you can separate that. It is advantageous for him to do it.
Can we agree as sports fans, though? Can we agree as sports fans that in the last 30 years, in my fucking lifetime of watching athletics outside of Craig Hodges, I can't think of any athlete that has said anything political?
Listen here.
I can't think off the top of my head.
It depends on if you're talking about radical revolutionary type politics. I think look at some of what Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics has been saying the last year, and then we could talk about that maybe. But Jaylen, he's him, David West.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. There's a
you mean while they're still playing now?
Yeah, there's a new athlete now that I think
Abdul Sharif said a lot when he was
actually. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, and then you have
sports is pro LeBron activism. I know. I think there's a natural skepticism towards popular people that exist. I mean, LeBron has every police killing. He's said something, which is a good thing, which is what the movement wants him to do. He's helped bail funds and stuff like that.
So is Kim Kardashian.
She's Kardashian for the movement. I'm not free. No one. I don't care about if Kim Kardashian wants to support Black Lives Matter. I'm happy with that.
She's freed people. Black as fuck.
Yeah, she's actually worked Alice Johnson. I mean, I'm cool with that. And
she's been paying for the legal fees of other people that got caught up.
There's some people who look at what Kim Kardashian she's just been an opportunist about it. So I have no energy into thinking about what LeBron James thinks. All I care is about what he's done and what he's done. Especially, I think the China thing is really slept on. That's a pretty significant thing. He kind of turned a lot of, because that was the moment in time in which if LeBron would have obfuscated and took a pro Daryl Morey position, and the whole NBA would have turned on China.
Absolutely. Danny Haiphong would have been bad
for in general. So I think he's, there's a reason why.
But he quiets the conversation, though. That just kills the whole conversation. When LeBron
doesn't. The conversation is going.
I don't know. I don't see how it's quieted. I mean, honestly, I see athletes. I see a new generation. We're talking about. I see a new generation of people that are like young athletes that are talking about stuff. I see the stuff he's done in Ohio with not just. He's not building the charter school. He's helping with the Akron public schools. He's got. I mean, there's so many. There's so many bad people,
let's look at the public school.
After LeBron, when there's
the public school is huge, though. The public school is huge, and Anand Girdadas actually, and people can say what they want about him being a liberal, and I think he is. But Anand Girdadas brought up an interesting point about LeBron and his public school and the power of his media empire. So we have to always keep these things in mind when we pat him on the back for these things that he does. Let's remember about the media empire that he uses to promote his brand. So the brand LeBron that wants you to know about his school, which is a wonderful thing, right?
But,
it's a
why should I have a problem with that, though?
But I'll explain.
Okay, my bad.
It's a public school in Akron, a poor city, devastated by deindustrialization, and that school has food for kids that are hungry. There's a bureaucrat in the school to help parents navigate through the public housing system or the public welfare system. That's amazing, right? If kids don't have clean they don't have clean clothes, there's washing machine and a change of clothes. The kids can wash their clothes if they don't have the ability to do it in LeBron's school. These are all amazingly positive things. That helps maybe 300 kids in a community of over 100,000. Is it his job to help everybody? No, but you have a media empire. While you're showing the expose on how wonderful you are, how hard is it, not very, to juxtapose your public school to the other public school next door and say, this is a reality. What I built here can be the reality for the way we look at public education moving forward.
It's just one of those, I understand what you're saying. I think LeBron's a wealthy athlete who has taken some good political positions. He's not a movement strategist. He's not involved with the movement of the school board in Akron. I think maybe people.
But he can control it like Bill Gates has controlled the school board.
I mean, we just can't have this idea that just because wealthy people have a bunch of money that they could go into anywhere and get people organized. At the end of the day, working class people got to organize and free themselves. We can't just think that the wealthy LeBron James who supports. Yeah. I mean, he's from Akron. He's from the working class, from the dirt. And he built himself up to that, and he's giving back. And I think that's a good thing.
I mean, I want to explain that school because I think it's the model of how we can look at public education moving forward. And it becomes a backpack. It almost becomes a trophy piece because we always talk about athletes being, pretty fucking arrogant and stuck up and look at me. And it becomes another. This is the thing I did. I one-upped all the other guys because he's not the only dude with a school.
No, but he's got a level of just power in the popular imagination that's pretty unparalleled. But we'll have to revisit this. But I wanted to move on. Justin had a baseball topic though, and I think it's pretty relevant. Yeah. Let's so hop in on that, Justin, and we'll go around the horn.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Mike's got a bounce on the baseball. It's like he had to go. No, he had to go anyways. It's not just because of baseball, man. But Mike, appreciate it, brother. As always, it's almost 10 o'clock.
Hey, Michael, good to meet you, brother. And I really am excited to check out the work that you're doing in Jacksonville, man.
Nah, brother. Please stay safe. Check everything y'all out. Good to be on here, Justin and Nate.
Yeah, absolutely. check out at Jax Takes Action on Twitter.
Check
learn more about that work. Yeah.
All right, talk to y'all later.
Peace, brother.
All right, peace. All right.
So
baseball time. Here we go.
Yeah. Before I bring this topic up, I just wanted to say, and we're going to use this this is not a jumping off point. to go back into that, but I just wanted to address two things that were said. Yeah, nice. One, LeBron James is poor as fuck compared to Bill Gates. I'm just throwing that out there. When you said that, like, tell that to Bill Gates. I mean, he is poor as fuck compared to that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that as far as other athletes, I was going to say that what Rashard Mendenhall said after the killing of Osama bin Laden was super political and super on point. And Justin Jackson. But anyway, I just want to say, like, as far as other players, like what Justin Jackson's doing is something that you know we haven't seen since Hodges, and it's awesome. Like I love what he's doing.
Did he sit out this past season, or was he hurt?
Justin Jackson played pretty well.
Yeah.
Did he play?
He had a really good year. It's like kind of the top backup. You know, if he were a Kaepernick, you know, he would get more heat. But you know, talking about the socialism stuff, I mean, he's actually said more. Like, he has more opinions. Kaepernick doesn't say much. I mean, and that's like, that's not a criticism. It's just a fact. I mean, I have like strategic things I wish Justin Jackson would, like, you know, maybe do differently.
Well, we all
organize it. Like, I was
jumping in his shoes.
Right. Like, in terms, but there, that just involves like making the focus a little bit bigger. And this is just totally constructive criticism, just like, but about like, you know, really catering it to like maybe trying to build some like political education for athletes, either like, you know, for teenage, you know, younger kids, instead. I mean, like, look, build up like anybody. Obviously, we have a YouTube channel, whatever, but like, I just think anybody in his position, it wouldn't just be Justin Jackson. I'd say this to any player that kind of like develops like a good leftist politics.
Yeah.
The best thing I feel like you can do is to like try to start doing grassroots education for young athletes coming up, even at the high school level, and with like as much as you can. Obviously, you got to be careful with teammates. That's your job and stuff like that. And people get kind of annoyed if you're trying to push them too much. So LA.
He's in LA.
Oh, they're in LA now.
The Chargers have not been in San Diego since 2016.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
But you know, you're right. In LA though, it's not as if they really had. You know, they barely before COVID were like not even selling out the MLS like 30,000 seat soccer stadium. So it's not like they have a huge fan base there with the Chargers.
It's like the Clippers of football.
Sort of. Yeah, it's a good analogy. Yeah.
So do either of you know who Kevin Mather is?
Mm-mm.
He was the team president and CEO of the Seattle Mariners, and he has been fired this week. And the reason he's been fired was he was talking to a Rotary Club. I believe it was in Kirkland, which is where the mighty Costco is from. So he's across Lake Washington. He's talking in Kirkland to a Rotary Club. He said what's getting most of the headline is the racist shit that he said. Now, the racist shit that he said was all against the Asian players and how they had terrible English, and then one Latin American player and how his English sucked, and how the team really wished they could have gotten all that money back by paying an interpreter.
Mariners guy that had Ichiro on his team. Interesting.
So, So, but he's at a private event. Mm-hmm. You know, so he's just being, you know, white guy saying white guy stuff. So I mean that,
touche.
Anyway, So
white dudes saying white guy stuff.
Just white guys doing white guy stuff. So that's really where this story kind of ends in the mainstream media until some other ball players kind of start picking up on something else that he said. And this is where, you know, the baseball and labor, sports and labor, you know, sports labor issues are labor issues. And just because these people make millions of dollars, they still make the same small amount that everyone else makes compared to owners. So we're still dealing with the same kind of percentage gap. We're still dealing with the labor issue. Well, anyway, what he said was, he said to this Rotary Club. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay the racism stuff. It was terrible. He should have been fired for that. Absolutely.
Justin, you want to play the clip? Go ahead. Finish it. Go ahead.
What he let slip that they weren't going to start one of their top prospects this year because they wanted to have more time of team control on his contract.
Yeah.
And that got a lot of ball players talking, because this is an issue that's plagued baseball for a long time. And it's gone all the way up to where, you know, Garrett Cole is one of the highest profile pitchers just moved over to that gross high profile team last year. Sorry,
man,
Nate, but I'm always going to slam the Yankees. But anyway,
let's go, man.
Even he's bringing this up to where this is an issue that's plagued baseball for a long time. And when you have this farm system and you have these contracts structured this way, nice. You get this point where teams will literally hinder the development of what the farm system's supposed to create just to maintain team control longer to get something for them. And it's kind of exposed, how many players are talking about it. So anyway, I can let you hit play on this, but like it's nuts that's been the least talked about thing, even in the sports media. And I'm not saying that the sports media shouldn't talk about racism. They should, but also talk about this other thing that he just slipped in there, that you're relying on other ball players to say, we know what he said, but did you also hear this?
Right.
So I don't watch ESPN anymore. Or any kind of sports media, unless it's football season. I might watch a little bit. Very little. It just got too angry.
You're just channel surfing, and it's just like, oh, the Bronco game's looking good.
I'll read it. I'll read it if I want to read it.
So, I'm prepping for something else.
Is the rhetoric coming from the pundits just about the racist stuff, or are people actually talking about the labor side?
Yeah, just the racist stuff. So
just racist.
But real quick, I got to throw this out there because this has been like a major issue. And what's kind of awesome about it is this guy Kevin Mather came out and just said this, so it kind of needed like someone to actually like just state what everyone already knew. It's one of those things where like sometimes it's just like let the Pandora's box sort of deal. And he just sort of stated what it is. It's like, all right, there's a deal just like with tenure and stuff, like the years of accrued service. If you keep them in the minors for long enough, just beneath the threshold for them to get a year of accrued service, then you have an extra year of player control in their contract. Mm-hmm. So to actually come out and say it, so they can always just like use a BS excuse and say like, well, we're not ready. We need some more development down there, blah, blah, blah. Just so happens to always be right below that threshold though. So, but just these are
interesting.
It is. Mm-hmm. It really is. It really is.
So do you find it interesting that like when we think about labor movements of the past, and even when we go back to the 60s and the early 70s in baseball, the Curt Flood, was it the early 70s, right? 71 or something.
Yeah, we had an episode on we had an episode on Curt Flood, by the way, with Justin being the expert.
Yeah, 60. Between 68 and 69 is when he
is the Curt Flood filing for free agency. Yeah. When you think about that era, and then you also think about the era of, labor struggles in the real world and a relationship. And I feel like with the destruction of like organized labor, people are disconnected from any labor struggle, because the greatest thing that the sports media has done when it comes to teaching us about labor is making it about rich people bitching.
Yeah, that's the way they frame it. They frame it that way. Yeah,
it's always rich people bitching, even with teacher strikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was part of one.
Richer people that are mad at the
exactly.
Never the even richer people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
owners in all sports. Yeah.
There is like Dan Kovalek today, or Kovalek was like making a point that people always like want to punch. It's easier to punch downward. And there is like that sort of element in the American like psyche, call it whatever it is. They were like that idea, like I'm just a millionaire waiting to happen, right? No one's actually poor. Sort of like it's insane, but like that's a bourgeois ideology that's very much benefited the power establishment, that everyone thinks of themselves like as being poor or working class. So not everyone, but people that aren't like don't have that class consciousness, right? Like are going to think of themselves as like being, they don't want to identify as that, because to them that identity means like resigning yourself to that condition, instead of realizing that like the collective power as a class, working class people have, is something that could crush, the power of big capital and the state. So
I feel like it never happens, Nate. It never happens, Justin.
Because the obstacles are profound, man. They're profound, but the struggle persists. The other options, nihilism. Let me hit play real quick, and then let's see what's react.
Yeah, I love comments like that. We can't hear it though, Nate.
Yeah. Oh, no way, man. No
you forgot to hit audio. We got to hear your audio. You got to share audio as well.
Oh, all right.
That is definitely something I've done multiple times. You do not stand alone in that. Oops.
Oh, there we go. I got it now. I got it. It's I love y'all like trying to be polite for like about the first like 17 seconds. So.
we're like maybe I'll figure it out.
By the M CEO was made public and created a PR nightmare. Mather is in full-blown crisis mode, apologizing to the M's, the players, and the fans for his lapse in judgment.
I love PR like firms, man. You just love just like developing. Like, what if your job is just developing these kind of statements? Think about that.
Yeah, like
he had comments were my.
Yeah.
he had a lapse in judgment, but at the same time, again, just addressing the racism, which again is fucking awful.
Justin, quit being so cynical. All right, they're just
just locker room talk.
Yeah, of course. Whatever.
My own. They do not reflect the views and strategy of the Mariners baseball leadership, who are responsible for decisions about the development and status of the players at all levels of the organization. I've been on the phone most of the day today, apologizing to the many people I have insulted, hurt, or disappointed in speaking at a recent online event.
Wonderful.
Mather said he's committed to making amends for his comments. So here's how it all started. He was speaking to the Bellevue Rotary Club back on February 5th.
Not Kirkland.
It was
Bellevue, Washington
posted to YouTube.
State.
Some of the answers during his Q&A were considered controversial and insulting.
This is what even like on a local level, like corporate media does. Controversial to some, right? You just sort of like create this like everything's ambiguity, right? And then you like project that as objective reporting, even if it's like not ambiguous. It's like very clear.
Yeah, but
fair and balanced. I believe that's the tagline.
Yeah, but what's that, Justin?
I was just going to say, but yet when Sinclair came to Seattle a few years ago and tried to buy King 5, King 5 was liberal enough to hold firm. So Sinclair bought Como instead, an ABC affiliate. Right. But I'm just saying.
It's great to know. Yeah, this is the liberal stalwart.
You're watching. I was going to say, you're watching the most liberal like local you can in Seattle.
Awesome.
Your Mariner might be insulted and offended the most. Kyle Seager. Seager was in the crosshairs. Mather said maybe Seager was probably overpaid, but he's been a great leader for the team.
There you go, right? Maybe you're a little liberal station. This is going to come through, Justin.
He also mentioned this would be his last year in Seattle. The M CEO said he told Seager that someday he will be in the M's Hall of Fame. Of course, those comments didn't sit well with the Seagers. Kyle's wife, Julie, tweeted, "So
still ignoring the issue.
House in Seattle on the market now?" Or
yeah, true.
The M's have a team option to retain.
Now it's about whether Julie has to put their house on the market or not.
I mean, and like
these are tough decisions. All right,
Kyle Seager wore a jersey a few years ago at Players Weekend that just said Corey's brother on the back because He's had
this player's a big deal.
Kyle Seager's had a long career. He's made tons of money. So they found a way to take a labor issue, but it's about this guy. It's about this guy who's played forever and has had a great career.
Who's going to identify with his struggle right now? Like instead of like look at what goes on in the minor leagues, like on the regular guys that are just like literally on the precipice of the cusp of Major League Baseball. But yet you have the owners. Hell, it's all or nothing, baby. That's America, right?
But the owners approved. The owners approved that the minor league minimum you can pay a guy in a month is now $700. So they're rolling in it. They're rolling.
It's that wild, man. And you're talking about dudes who like some of them have money from their signing bonuses. So if you were like a high draft pick, like you might get like 2.5 mil in the bank. But like guys that are lower draft picks, they don't.
You're going to sit on that for 6 years.
And you're
gonna sit on that.
Well, unless you're like Manny Machado and like superstar talents that get called up,
your ass off. I mean, I don't know that the whole thing is like, again, it goes back to the whole. If I frame a labor issue as rich people bitching, then you're always going to side with the boss because the boss knows better.
Yeah,
you're good point. Good point. Yeah, let's
and the year for 2022. But according to Mather, it sounds like that.
You want to let me. Let's just...
and I was going to say that unfortunately this story has gotten the most legs only when the pitcher who's just signed last year the richest pitcher contract in history decides to talk about it.
Yeah,
because
Garrett
it can
Cole,
still be framed. It can still be framed as that rich guy bitching, and we won't talk about it's on the poor people he's bitching on behalf of. And sure, there's a selfish reason. He was also that poor kid once. But like that's called solidarity, and that's called knowing what it's like to be there, because you're not guaranteed to eventually sign the richest contract like he did.
And of course, Justin.
They're framing it like he needs to shut up.
Yeah, you're right, Justin. And you're being like Garrett Cole, like obviously grew up pretty privileged in Orange County, California, but relative to like in baseball terms, like he signed with the Yankees, and it's a free agent in 2020 for 9 years and $324 million. So it's like, but of course the Yankees are like making astronomically more than that. So that's again, but of course your point is about how are people going to relate, right? And it's like they're going to frame it as Garrett Cole. Look at this like super wealthy Yankee pitcher, that has one of the biggest contracts, and like this is the guy who's the spokesman on behalf of like minor league players living that kind of lifestyle. And
I'm gonna throw out there. I just want you both to know it's 10-12 here. I've been watching. We've had nobody watching for like 40 minutes now.
Really? Well,
just gonna throw that out there. We've lost them.
It's all good, man. Well, like this is gonna be like we can release. Let me just finish playing this. Like this is like people.
I'll cut what I just said out.
Most people watch this.
Share it. So now, fuck it. I don't know if we want to share it or not.
Yeah. But most people watch this, after the fact, quite frankly,
I know
when you look at it. But so let's just finish the rest of this, then we'll kind of wrap here quickly. All right.
Option is all but out the window. Seager has played 10 seasons in Seattle. Jared Kelenic is the Mariners' top prospect. He's ranked 4th in all of baseball. Kelenic is a 21-year-old outfielder who many think will make the jump to the bigs sometime this season. Mather stated the team offered Kelenic a 6-year extension with 3 more option years, a similar deal to what they signed Evan White to last year. But after considering the offer, Kelenic turned it down. Mather admitted the team's plan of keeping Kelenic in the minors, possibly reducing his service time. He said, quote, "We would like him to get a few more at-bats in the minor leagues, probably AAA Tacoma for a month. Then he will likely be in left field at T-Mobile Park for the next 6 or 7 years, and then he'll be a free agent." Mather went on to say Kelenic won't commit beyond his free agent years. I wouldn't say he's unhappy. He appreciates the offer. He just refused to sign it. He thinks he's going to be that good. A lot of fans have been waiting for pitcher Logan Gilbert to make his major league debut. The Mariners drafted him in the first round in 2018. Mather offered his opinion on Gilbert as well, saying, quote, "You won't see him on April 1st, but by mid-April, you will see a young man named Logan Gilbert. He's the real deal." Here are a few other opinions Mather offered up on the club. He expects Taylor Trammell and catcher Cal Raleigh to be in the bigs this summer, which is interesting because manager Scott Service and GM Jerry DiPoto have said they are set up well at catcher with Murphy and Torrens. Mather says the team's number 2 prospect.
All right. So, anyways, he's not getting on it, but the race stuff is really not talked about much there.
Yeah, and so that's actually the first, and it took a local station in Seattle to be the first to really focus on the right thing. But what they leave out there is, so I see that they gave you the framework and they're going to let you put together the puzzle. So they talk about the outfielder and they talk about the years of service. But when they get to that pitcher, if he's pitching on opening day versus he's pitching in mid-April, that's a huge difference to their team control over him because he makes open roster.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. So for him to, and in, I believe in the actual audio, Mather talks about that more connectively. Like he literally goes
to the crowd how it all works.
Well,
a Rotary Club in Bellevue.
Yeah. He goes from the one player and talking about team control, and he blends that into the pitcher saying, and that's why you won't see him until. So they even like omitted that a little bit, but like they did give you the framework. But that's more in depth than ESPN has done until Garrett Cole finally said something. You know, it took a guy worth $300 million to say, hey, did you hear that? Because that was bullshit. And that happens in all teams, and they all do this, and we need to stop this for ESPN to cover it. But they're always pro owner. ESPN's never sided with the player on a single issue. They're always pro owner.
But except when it comes to like racial justice issues and stuff, they've
yes.
Right,
yeah,
but
that's the default setting, right?
But even
corporate sort of racial justice type, like.
But even then, they still when what's the original Texans owner who passed away when he died.
Bob McNair.
Yeah, when Bob McNair died, ESPN still ran like a glowing, like, look at how cool and awesome, and really his whole life was. Don't take that one incident where he said one of the most awful things ever.
The inmates, players. Being inmates running the asylum. We can't let the players be. We can't let the inmates run the asylum in the NFL.
Bob McNair made his money, before civil rights. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say,
the Houston Texans owner, baby, is probably a racist.
Maybe he hasn't hired.
He's dead now, but he's still a racist.
We were talking one day. Who was I talking with? I was talking with my buddy. So we have a friend from high school that is a basketball agent. She's a WNBA agent, and before she was doing WNBA, she worked with a bigger agent with a lot of NBA players. I remember having a discussion about Daniel Sterling. Is that his name?
Donald Sterling.
Donald Sterling.
Yeah.
And my frustration with the players at that moment, as a younger person, as some time ago, was like, why don't you guys just not show up? Fuck flipping your jerseys inside out. And the talk was like there were so many agents in people's heads, like really stopping them, because the guys were really pissed off finding out all this shit about the owner of their team, because I seriously doubt that anybody vets their boss to that level. I wouldn't vet my boss for a bullshit job at Taco Bell. So why would I think that the NBA players are vetting their boss to that level?
It's not like they even get to choose the guys that are drafted. It's like with the way the draft works, you're like, what are you going to do? Just retire? Or give up, and then your family's gonna hate you and be like, "Yo, you worked your whole life. We've been trying to get out, and now you're gonna fucking retire."
No one's gonna do that.
Like all these owners are racist in some ways, but he just was really racist. And
he was supposed to get an Image Award the night that story broke.
That's so wild, isn't it? Yeah, he paid for it.
What would the repercussion be? Like that's what I don't understand about players not wielding their power. That's why I don't understand why fucking Obama can come in and stop a 1-game NBA strike. What are you gonna do? You're gonna fire them? You're gonna fire the entire Lakers team?
To the earlier part of the conversation, there is a black ruling class.
Yeah,
Think about the Image Award and Donald Sterling.
That is wild. I mean, that's NAACP.
He was not renting. It's not just he said some N-words on a phone. Like that was his MO was to be a bit of a slumlord and also not rent to black people, and so you're gonna get like this prestigious award. It's interesting to see how young kids are so concerned with their brand at a young age. Nate, you teach the youth, so you see it every day.
Yeah, man.
And to be so disconnected from real power, though.
Well, that's the problem with my kids right now. Sadly, man, they're like they can't even imagine the brand stuff because they're literally living like below. So the kids were at the high school where I worked, until this past year. That was the case, man. You got risers, a lot of them are super, they were public school, but like one of the most diverse public schools in America, actually, in Jersey City. But yeah, very much the brand stuff, how you like present yourself, like Instagram, kind of, modeling and all that kind of stuff, different ways of building it. But then you see like really in oppressed communities where it's not like a magnet public school. It's concentrated poverty. And it's just like, man, this virtual school stuff, I don't want to sound like I'm like a open and up right winger, but I really do feel, man, for like the kids with no support at home, it's like they're in prison right now in a lot of ways. When you don't have, I hate to use that, but like that when you upper middle class kids to go out and play in the neighborhood, have outlets, stimulation. But when you have parents that are just struggling so bad economically, And and I'm having so many heartbreaking conversations with like moms right now, man. It's like every day.
So Justin, I was talking to Nate off air. We had a phone conversation. Thank you for having that phone conversation with me before we went on, Nate. I'm actually really glad I had that conversation. If I haven't said it, thank you guys again for having me on here. I actually am having a very good time. I don't know how much longer I can stay.
No, we got
the little beige child you saw that ran by is going to need me to put him to bed in a little bit.
Let's do it. So.
But I do want to say this to your point, and this is why I think it's a very complex issue, and I think what Nate is saying is extremely important. Working at a homeless shelter, there was a few kids there. It wasn't a lot. There was probably three kids out of 300 people. And there were 12, 5, and 6. And of course, they were bad. And of course, they ran around at all hours of the night. And I try to keep them around me because we don't know who is a sex offender in here. We don't know anything, right?
Right.
So stay around me, hang around me. We're going to play games. We're going to read. We're going to do whatever the fuck I can do in my 8 to 10 hours here at this facility.
Yeah.
I find out these kids don't go to school even virtually. Another woman inside of the facility used to teach before she retired and lost everything. One of the homeless people. I said, hey, if I can get a room and if I can get some books, would you be willing to teach these kids how to read? Fuck yeah, I'll be able to teach. Yeah, hell yeah. So now they got a teacher. We built a schedule for them.
That's important. They need that consistency.
Right. It's going to be a consistent schedule, which, it was hard to deal with their moms. But we still built this shit up where they were going to learn. And the one thing I had was a little bit of control because this is a shelter-in-place facility. And for the most part, these kids are just stuck inside of a hotel room. There's 3 of them in one small hotel room.
Right.
So they're not going out in the world. For the most part, their moms aren't going out into the world. So we don't have to worry too much about spread. And the woman teaching them was in her 70s. So you can control the environment a little bit, but it's so important that these kids got something. The older one was supposed to get taught, of course, a little differently because he was like 12 years old. And I had assumed that he had been going to school for all these years. So I'm giving him Howard Zinn's People's History. We're reading it, right? We're reading it paragraph by paragraph. He's struggling through some things, and we're explaining every paragraph. We're explaining everything that he's reading so he can get a real good grasp of it. But he's really liking doing the real basic stuff with his siblings. So I was like, hey, what was the last school you went to? His mom goes, oh man, he quit going to school in 2nd grade.
Man, you gotta get Kamala on her, man. Yeah. That's messed up, but
it's true. But that was actually a truancy law before she got into office. But yeah,
she was very zealous about.
She was very overzealous about it because it sounded good. Because when you hear the story of that little boy, who has been out of school for 7 years, you go, well, that's a failure of the parents. I say that's a failure of the system because this little boy lived in cars that whole time. He never had stability. His parents never had stability, or parent never had stability.
Yeah.
So now he's got stability within the shelter system. Now he's got stability because he's got a teacher that he sees. And what's even cool about that shit is they have input to say, hey, can we learn how to tell time? Can we learn how to write this sentence? Can we do this? Nate, as a teacher, if the students are giving you're getting excited.
Oh yeah.
The environment was there. It pains me. It pains me to tell this story. So when I leave the facility, because I had issues with the facility and the way they ran it, they kill the programs.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
didn't cost them anything. Yeah. The lady teaching the class again is one of the homeless residents. You don't have to pay her.
Yeah,
but the problem is though, bureaucrats are going to see it and they're going to say, all right, what standards is this meeting? What like we're looking at the strands. I mean, I'm working on a curriculum committee right now at the district, just after school, and it's like learning how to and look, the Common Core, some of that stuff's overblown. Some of it's just literally by like grade 6, you should be able to analyze multiple texts. Like they're like, they're not like what's nefarious is like the education privatized industrial complex of like textbook companies and consultants. But just the literal standards, I mean, it's like a lot of that like stuff about Common Core, I think it's overblown. But the overall just like making it about, if it's not, I mean, we bring in like there's the school board with virtually, we've had people come in from, like talking about how you can be the next Jeff Bezos, like a month or two ago. And I'm just like the tone deafness of this. Like, this is a consultant lady that goes and speaks at other schools saying this. These kids are just sitting there like drooling in boredom. Like, as she's just like talking during this like once a week sort of thing. And I just remember just being like what? Like, you're like just sitting here like listing off like a bunch of like, ruling class assholes, like, and being like, and really reducing education down to
how much
just the acquisition of skills. So but really they're conditioning them to be like just the labor force in a very low wage sector type jobs by and large. Kind of like,
that why we created public school?
Well,
in this country, in a capitalist country?
And I tell that story to Nate's story about wanting kids to get back in class, because everyone understood the importance of masking. Everyone understood the importance of wiping everything down when they were done. Everyone understood the importance of just being in the room. Being in the room was so important to everybody there that they were going to take all these extra precautions. Yeah,
that's all. It's just a shame, man. So look at I mean, look, it's sad as it is. You got to look at these rays of light that these are the kind of things that just have to keep. What's going to happen is like we can't predict the moments, in like revolutionary change, because like it's a confluence of factors, I feel like, but it's like, but there's got to be, the political education's got to be as relentless as we can make it, so that there is like hopefully that organization that's materialized by the time that the contradictions that end up propping the system up can't hold the weight anymore, and hopefully that leads to a better world, but anyways, bro,
I hope.
But I'm not saying just blindly hope, though.
No,
but yeah,
putting myself there, and they had given me this position, kind of not knowing my politics. So there was a lot of things that we were trying to do. I mean, there's a lot of violence in those situations, man. I saw a lot of women get their ass whooped, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
And they're not going to leave the situation. Like, I saw a woman get hit so hard, she had, I'm not over exaggerating, a golf ball size knot on her head. And my first reaction was, well, I guess we're going to take this guy out of here and arrest him. And she was like, no, I want him to stay. Please don't. And you have to get, you talk with the dude and you talk with her and you try to get shit all worked out. But it made me start to we need to get a program for women to deal with violence. We need to get a program for men to deal with violence. We need to get drug program, all of it. No,
man.
And this shit was all volunteer. Everybody that came through was a person that just wanted to help.
Yeah, it's like professionalizing everything is all they care about, right? It's like, it's not that you don't realize that, like, if the parents in this community, if they're not empowered to like actually have a role in the schools, if like, they don't have enough of the credentials, and we want people to have credentials, like to be able to like, have gone through training, but at the same time, there's so much wasted human capital, man. Like, the people just wasted human energy potential, that's just squandered because it doesn't fit within like the U.S. Department of Education or the California, New Jersey Department of Education's, protocols, right? Like, everything being like, based on protocol, we live in a very litigious society too. So it's, to an extent, like, you're in there and you're a principal. I mean, there's some good principles I know. I mean, I'm not delusional about like, that in certain situations, like, you have an inherently oppositional relationship, but like their job is to get as much, work out of the staff as possible. But there's ones that are a lot better than others. But ultimately, you have a lot of freaking I's to dot and T's to cross, or you could very much be sued very, very quickly for a whole bunch of stuff that could happen in a split second. And it's like capitalism creates that kind of like just maze where you can essentially, it's just hard to have much energy other than just making sure you're complying, and that's something I challenge myself to struggle against, becoming that some days. But anyway, Jason, you're on mute, but I think we better just come off mute. You'd say your final word. You got the last word.
Sorry about that, bro.
Justin. Are you good? Justin's good.
Can you hear me?
Got the floor. You're the last word, my man.
Yeah.
Hey, love y'all, everybody. Jason's going to take us out.
Hey, Redspin Sports, everybody, please subscribe to this channel. Like them on all the social medias. It's one thing to talk about sports in depth, and these guys have a pretty in-depth knowledge, being that the first thing we talked about was hockey.
that kind of happened to be an accident of being involved.
He should know about hockey being from Florida. But that being said,
I know a little bit.
The political discussion was aces. I could talk sports and politics with you guys all day long. You're more than welcome to come on my show to have the same 3-hour rant about politics and sports. Shout out to Mike that had to take off early. I appreciate you guys as human beings. I appreciate everything you guys do. And I'm glad that you are here.
Yeah, likewise, man. Feelings mutual. All right. So y'all be well.
Likewise,
all right.
Absolutely.
And until next time, look out for the interview I did today with Dan Kavalik and I mean, he's gonna get mad at me, man. He's a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. Dan, he's got a lot of great books. This one endorsed by Oliver Stone. Dan Kavalik, Kovalik. That's the right way to say it. Slovakian last name. Kovalik. Yeah. So, anyways, Dan's a great guy. Went to Moeller High School, same high school as Ken Griffey Jr. Some other big famous athletes, and we had a great conversation about his sporting background, my sporting background, kind of comparing, contrasting, and should have that actually, Justin, we can talk tomorrow. It should be pretty easy editing, but also about his relationship with Oliver Stone and kind of like how he's grown politically and working for the United Steelworkers as their attorney in the 90s. So a lot of stuff that intersects in that conversation. I think it's hopefully something people find enjoyable. So on that note, we're out for the night. Peace. Enjoy the rest of your evening at 7:30 on the West Coast right now, Jason, as we head towards the side.
Peace, y'all.
Deuces. All right. Out.